This is Chapter 6 of the Ridiculously Effective Parenting Training. In the last chapter, we discussed that we must never, ever express anger at our children. It destroys them. We talked about how we can get rid of our own anger, and that without it, we can teach our children everything they need to know about finding happiness. In this chapter, we'll talk a lot about how to tell the truth about our anger and other mistakes, more especially to our children. As I used to say to people when I inserted a needle behind the eye for anesthesia for procedures, which is awful just to hear about, but I used to say to them every time, this will hurt a little bit, and this chapter might hurt a little bit. As I said in Chapter 2, we need to learn to tell the truth about ourselves. Why? It turns out there are several reasons. First, to find real love. I gave examples of this in Chapter 2, a number of examples of us telling the truth to other people about ourselves. It's how we find people who are capable of seeing, accepting, and loving us. In fact, it's how we develop them, too. And we tell the truth for this reason only to people who are capable of seeing, accepting, and loving, as we talked about in Chapter 2. There are other reasons to tell the truth about ourselves, other than for finding love. For example, to increase understanding and decrease confusion, to diffuse conflict, and to increase trust. In Chapter 2, I clearly said that we cannot ever expect love from our children and explained why. So the first reason for telling the truth about ourselves, to find real love, does not apply to us telling the truth to our children. But we can tell the truth about ourselves to our children, just not for the reason of finding real love. So again, what are those other reasons? To increase understanding and decrease confusion, to diffuse conflict, and to increase trust. Let me illustrate these last three reasons for truth-telling to our children by giving one example of how you might tell the truth about yourself to your children. It's a big example. It's an important one you'll want to pay close attention to. This is a pretty important moment for you and your child, what I'm about to say. If you have a stressed or difficult child with any of the problems that we've been discussing all along, which has turned into quite a list, that child does not feel loved, at least not enough. And it's likely they never have, not in the unconditional sense. There's no blaming, I emphasize, just understanding and knowing this. So when you first learn about real love and you realize how you haven't had experiences with it in the past, in your own childhood and adulthood, and how that inexperience has affected your children, after you pick yourself up off the floor, you really need to share some of this realization, the truth, with your children. Why? Well, let's look again at those reasons to tell the truth about yourselves to your children. To increase understanding and decrease confusion, to diffuse, make less conflict, to increase trust. Let's talk about the first one. To increase understanding and decrease confusion. If you're born into a family where unconditional love is not a consistent pattern, which is true of almost every family, you are unconsciously, often non-verbally, taught that tension, criticism, disappointment, neglect, anger, all those negative things are normal, but they're not healthy. So you still feel pain. You begin to react to the pain. You get angry and frustrated. And you have to decrease pain with something. We all do. Anger, people-pleasing, lying, acting like a victim, withdrawing from people, using drugs, alcohol, sex, something. But all those ways of decreasing pain make more problems and more pain. Let's look at just a few. You feel a little less helpless when you get angry. But then what happens when you get angry? You make other people feel small, which makes you feel like a brute, or they defend themselves with more anger at you. So it kind of goes like this. They get angry at you. You feel pain. When they get angry, you feel the pain of, I don't love you. You defend yourself with anger. So it's, I don't love you. Yeah, I don't love you more. Yeah, but I didn't love you first. And I don't love you back and forth just leaves everybody blind and dead. People pleasing. Temporarily, you can get most people to like you with people pleasing. But now you are trapped. Now you have to keep it up. Now you have to keep pleasing people. And in the end, you essentially sell your soul so that people will accept you for a minute or two or less. So you end up causing problems. And then when they withdraw their approval, you feel worse. So you people please more. You see the cycle and it becomes very addicting. And the same is true with lying and acting like a victim and being withdrawn and using drugs. The problem in the beginning is they all work. That's the problem, is that they work, but not long and only superficially. And then you become addicted. Then they cause their own set of problems. Yuck. And because you were born into a vacuum of love and you continue to live in one, then the lack of love is normal. And all this becomes very confusing because people talk about love. They say they care about you. You know somehow deep inside that you're supposed to feel loved, but it's just this big mess of trading and fighting and shooting arrows and lobbing grenades, and it's confusing. You might think or say, I just don't understand, because I've heard this thousands of times. People will say, I just don't understand why. And then they finish the sentence with, I get so angry. Other people are so selfish. My husband or wife doesn't see that X, and on and on. The world is a very confusing place when you don't understand that all pain is caused by a lack of unconditional love. If you don't understand why people behave as they do, you add confusion to the pain. And life's painful enough without adding confusion. Your child is confused. Guarantee it. They ask questions, because I hear them all the time from the kids and from the kids when they're grown up. They ask questions like, why am I unhappy? Why do I hate myself? Why am I so ugly? Why am I cutting myself? Why am I depressed and withdrawn? Why are my parents so stupid and controlling or neglectful or whatever? These why questions happen all day long for many people. Pain is bad enough by itself. Adding confusion makes the pain worse. Really. Not understanding the why of things. You suddenly develop this pain in your knee and it just comes out of nowhere and it's just sudden and it's there all the time. But, well, no, not all the time. Then sometimes it goes away and you go to the doctor and he goes, well, we're not sure what the problem is. You might as well just go, I don't know, beats me. That makes it worse because now we don't know why it's there. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know what the pattern is. We don't know if there's a treatment. Whereas if he goes, oh, you just have blank, and he gives you some physical therapy to do or a pill to take or something. I don't mean just to get rid of the pain, and now you're not confused. Now the same pain actually feels better because you know why. I was a surgeon for 20 years, and Physical pain is bad enough, but if you don't know the cause, it's crazy making. People would come in to see me and say, you're the 20th person I've seen. I don't understand this. And if I said, oh, well, it's just due to this. Well, what do we do about it? And I said, well, it'll take us a little while, but we do this and this. Or even if I just said, well, it's a pain that just comes and goes, and it's not going to affect your vision or your function. You'll be able to walk, and it's not going to kill you. And they go, oh, and they feel better even though I didn't make their pain go away at all. So confusion and frustration make the pain worse, and they've actually done studies to show that that's true. We do better when we know the cause. I've watched people sigh in relief when they know that there's a cause, and especially if there's a treatment, before the treatment's given. Pain of unknown cause, in medicine they call it pain of unknown origin. There's a diagnosis I hate delivering to people. Your child is in pain, and not knowing why is confusing them and makes the pain worse. As you tell the truth about yourself, here's the practical part of this. And I'll give you an example in a minute. You increase their understanding and you decrease their confusion. Notice that in this case, you're not telling the truth about yourself to find real love, not to get something for you. This is for the benefit of your child. Now, I'm going to give you an example of truth-telling in a little bit, and I'm going to point out how these little bits of the truth-telling do these three things. Increase understanding and decrease confusion. Number two, which you see here on the slide, to diffuse conflict and to increase trust. Let's deal with number two. Most children in pain, as demonstrated by their anger, withdrawal, addictions, self-harming, are angry at their parents. Most children are. They're angry at you. Why? Why you? You're the closest. You must be the cause. You're the one telling them what to do all the time and offering your opinion. So if they're miserable, it's got to be you. You're the one most in control. Watch somebody who trips. They're walking along on a sidewalk. They trip and they catch themselves. Almost every single time they turn around and look to see the cause of what they tripped on. Was it an unlevel sidewalk? Was there a rock? Was there a whatever? Even if they're never going to pass by that place again. We have this just innate need. We need to know. We feel pain. We look for the closest cause. And that applies to you and your kids. You're the closest potential cause. They're in pain, and you're the one who tells them no about things they want. Then they're immediately angry, so you must be the cause. Makes sense to them. You're the one who tells them to clean their room, brush their teeth when they don't want to. You're the one who gets angry, fueled even more then by their confusion. They associate their pain with you. Just makes all the sense in the world to them. You say you love them, but then you hurt them. So now we got confusion and lack of understanding, and it's just making them nuts. You hurt them. But if they understand the cause of their pain, which we're going to give an example of here in just a bit where you tell the truth, and know that you're working on doing something about it because you're telling them the truth about yourself, which we're getting to just a little bit more, the conflict decreases dramatically. At least they understand finally that you do accept some responsibility here and you're trying to do something about it. Otherwise, they're just left with, I don't know why I'm in pain. I know my parents the closest and the one yelling at me, but that's pretty confusing too. When are they going to quit that? And why do they keep yelling at me? That's a lot of confusion and conflict. Another answer to why tell the truth about ourselves: to increase trust. Our children cannot feel loved by us if they don't trust us. They can't trust us if they sense deep down in places they can't describe with words that somehow we're not telling them the whole story. If they feel like that, they can't trust us. And of course, they do feel like we're not telling them everything. We do keep lots of things from us. And they're in pain and confused, and we're not helping them with that. So how could we not be keeping something important from them? We're not describing to them why they're in pain, so we must be withholding it. We withhold in their minds, and often they're right, we're withholding love, though not intentionally. We're withholding life lessons, mostly because we don't know them, we don't know how to teach them, explanations of their pain, and on and on. Again, they can't describe what we're not telling them. We don't know either, but they know something is missing. They don't much trust the world. I mean, why should they? If they're in pain and the world doesn't stop the pain, and we're the closest to them, so they trust us even less. Because we're the closest, we're the ones who would, in their minds, have the most responsibility to help them with their pain. But we don't. In fact, usually we're the cause of their pain. And somehow they know this, but they're not quite sure how to put it into words until they explode and say, I hate your guts. Look at a group of teenagers when they're being approached by just an average adult who represents to them their parents. On the whole, a group of teenagers in the hall at school or just, sitting around smoking or whatever, you can see in their faces the sense of defensiveness, disdain, anger, disgust. And that's with an average adult. With us, it's even worse. I'm going to give you an example of something that many, many parents have said to their children, which has been proven by experience to be a productive beginning in establishing trust, increasing understanding, eliminating confusion, and extinguishing conflict. Kind of sounds like a good deal. I'm going to suggest to you something to say that works. Well, what do we got to lose? Let's try this. I'm not telling you what to say. I am giving you one example that has consistently worked with thousands of kids. That would be, well, a lot better than nothing. A lot better than what you got now. A lot better than what other parents, you've heard other parents say to their children. This single conversation could begin to change everything. I said I was going to get more and more practical. This is really practical. There's a lot of loving in it. Loving and teaching. So listen as closely to the tone and delivery as to the words. I'm going to play your part in speaking to your child, recognizing that some circumstances will be different from one child to the other. The language will vary, especially with age, but also with specific traumas and their reactions to pain. I'll give examples in subsequent chapters that are tailored more specifically to the specific problems that we've referred to several times in previous chapters. But I'm going to speak this in the first person, as though I were you, talking to your kid. You can easily just change this in your head to you talking to your child. I'm just trying to avoid the complication of too many pronouns. Them, they, you, their, and explaining it every time I say it. So now I'm going to say the entire introduction to the child. Now, I say introduction because we're going to call this your initial or your first truth telling. First is probably easier. Your first real truth telling to your child. You're going to think, I tell my children the truth all the time. Yeah, you're going to change your mind in a minute. And then we'll talk about the component parts of this first truth telling and what I'm saying. So here we go. I'm talking to your child, and in your mind, this is you doing this. Quote, because I'm giving you an example of what I would say and what something like what you're going to say to your child. Quote, before I say another word, you can relax. I don't have a critical word to say here about you. And I'm not going to tell you what to do for a change. You've been unhappy for a good while now. And the good news is that I've finally figured out a lot about why. I know that I've sometimes blamed you for X. Name a difficult behavior or 2 or 3 that the child has. I know that I've sometimes blamed you for that, cutting, playing games, I don't care. Sometimes in words, but many times with my frustration and irritation. I was wrong. I was very wrong. I've been learning some stuff about parenting, and now I know that all you ever wanted from me was love. I know I've claimed to love you in the past, but the kind of love you wanted, the love you still need, is unconditional love. Unconditional love means that I care about you without wanting anything from you in return, and I have not done that. How do I know that I wanted something from you and not loved you unconditionally? Because when you didn't behave like I wanted, I got disappointed and irritated. There is no disappointment or impatience or irritation in unconditional love. None. When I was angry, I was thinking about myself. Anger is always selfish. And I hurt you. When I was angry, I was caring about me more than you. So you felt like I didn't care about you. Turns out you were right. And I hurt you a lot. I was wrong. Sure, I did my best loving you, but I wasn't raised with that kind of love, unconditional love, and nobody ever taught me how to give it to you as a parent. So I was lost. My very best attempts to love you were not nearly good enough. It hurt you. It's no wonder that you've avoided me and been angry at me. It's no wonder that you're whatever. You're going to have to fill in the blank. That you're angry, that you're resentful, that you're withdrawn, that you've used drugs, it's no wonder that you've blank. You could pick one thing or 10 things. Then you continue. I can't promise you that I won't get irritated again or be unloving again. But I can tell you that I'm learning how not to repeat the past. I'll be talking to you more often about what I'm learning, and you might even notice me behaving differently. You just don't need to be hurt anymore. Now, do you have any questions or anything you just want to say? End quote. That's it. That's your first truth-telling. We'll be spending the rest of this training talking about what happens after this conversation and how to modify it for age and circumstances, how to do it in different ways. But for now, let's look at what this statement really communicates. We'll look at some of the individual sentences in the process, demonstrating to you why you're saying this, and also giving you information you can use when your child has questions about what you're saying. So I'm going to explain each sentence or 2 sentences together. And as I'm explaining it to you, you can use that to explain more to your child. It's all very useful and practical. You can use it immediately. So I started off saying, quote, and when I'm talking about a particular passage, I'll say quote each time. I'll try to remember to do that so that you'll know that I'm taking it from that longer quote that I just did. Quote, before I say another word, you can relax. I don't have a critical word to say here about you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do for a change. Now, first thing, tone. Did you hear my tone? If you didn't, back it up, listen to it again. You cannot be afraid as you say all of this. Most people, when they hear this the first time, are going, whoa, there's no way in this world I can say this to my own kid. Well, you're here, you're learning this, you might as well try it. It's not going to kill you. And the potential rewards are unbelievable. And how long did that take? We picture the first time of really being close and intimate with and honest with our child as this long experience. I've had people actually say to me, I think I'll take my child the first time I tell the truth on a weekend, and we'll just talk about the truth for the weekend. And I'm thinking, your child doesn't trust you one whit. Your child wouldn't leave a candy bar out and trust you with it. Let's stick with this first truth, which takes all of 4 minutes. If you need to practice saying this to another adult, do that. Find a friend. Use especially somebody who has taken or is taking this training. We have a website and conference calls dedicated to help you find people you can practice with. Second thing about this particular part of the first truth telling. You can't feel guilty. That's just another form of fear. You're not allowed, not with your child there. You can feel guilty all you want with another adult. And if you cry as you speak, pay attention. For example, your child will feel responsible for your happiness, which is exactly the effect you do not want. So there is, to quote a line from a movie that I really enjoyed, there is no crying in baseball. And there is no crying when you're telling the truth about yourself to your child. I know, it just almost seems like, well, but if I'm crying sincere tears, I'm really sad, then they'll believe me more. No, people feel really, women often ask, so why are guys so uncomfortable when we cry? Because they don't know what to do. It's a problem. You're in pain, and they're going, so let's see, you can't use a hammer. A 3/8-inch wrench isn't going to do it. Plumbing putty isn't going to work. We want to help somebody who's crying. And you do not, this is your truth telling to your child about your behavior. You do not want to put them in a position where they feel like they have to help you. And if you cry, your child is going to feel responsible for your happiness. You don't want that. If you feel guilty, you will feel so distracted by that you will not be able to adequately love your child. We love to use the phrase multitask. Doesn't exist. No, what we do is sequentially task. Or we go back and forth between things. If you weave guilt in this, there's no way that you can fake a loving tone that your child's going to buy. So you got to get over this. Guilt is far too expensive. Now, I'm going to answer a question you've already got in your head. Well, but I've hurt my child all these years, and my child's problems are due to my not being loving. How do I get over feeling guilty? You have to accept this profound, incredibly simple truth. You'll understand this better each time I say it, and I'm going to say it more times than once, I promise. You have to accept that you did your best with what you knew at the time, which is right up to this point. And now you're going to change direction as you are loved and taught. There is no guilt that makes any sense if you made the mistakes in ignorance. I don't know how to play hockey, at all. Actually, I rollerblade really well, and I thought, well, the ice skating's got to be similar. They look similar. I put on a pair of ice skates, and, well, it was fairly comical. I fell immediately, and then I couldn't get up. I mean, I had a 7-year-old skate by and offer to help me up, and I'm thinking, what are you going to do to get me off the ground? So I can't play hockey because I can't skate. Turns out you have to know how to skate to play hockey. I don't feel guilty about my utter inability to play hockey. None. I would not feel guilty if I failed to score the winning goal for my team in the Stanley Cup. Amazing that I knew the name of the cup. Everybody in the auditorium is waiting for me to score the winning goal, and I've got one of those, I think they'd call them penalty shots or goals at the end. There's just me and the goalie, and I just get to take a free shot at the goal, pretty much. It wouldn't matter. I'd just fall down, which I'm sure I would be roundly booed by everyone on television around the world. I wouldn't feel guilty because I was never taught to play. I don't know how. Don't know how to skate. Get rid of the guilt for not knowing how to do what you were never taught to do. It's really that simple. Unless you're one of a really, really tiny number of people, I'll bet you anything I played the piano better than you do. Because I used to at least, played pretty well. Well, I took lessons and I practiced every day and played in recitals and concerts, and that's why. So, should you feel guilty that you don't know how to play the piano as well as I do? That'd be kind of stupid. Just as it's kind of stupid to feel guilty for not knowing how to do something. Yes, I know that a new grammar rule, I did my best, cannot be followed in the same sentence by but. That's a new rule in grammar, because half of you are going, yeah, but I hurt my child. Yeah, tough. How else were you going to learn to be a parent? By raising puppies? No, it's not the same. So back to the first two sentences. I said, quote, before I say another word, you can relax. I don't have a critical word to say here about you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. For a change, end quote. Now let's look at what you're communicating here. When you tell your child that you need some time with them, because you're saying, before I say another word, and you're going to arrange for this, you're not going to just say this as they go by on a bicycle. You're going to say, I need 10 minutes with you. Won't even take that long, probably the first time. They're going to be dying to have this be short. So when you say you need some time, I can tell you in part, because you're here watching this training, that they will feel some fear. We're the cause of their pain and their fear. And then we say, I want to have a conversation with you. And they're going, great. I'm going to be alone in the room with this fool who's hurt me. And notice the tone with which I say this fool. We're just all fools. I think there's a song, Fools in Love, if I remember, it's really old. When we don't know something, we are relatively foolish. But it's not our fault. We didn't know. And on uncounted other occasions, when you've spoken to them, there has been some disappointment, criticism, irritation, frustration, controlling, whatever. How do I know? Because if there hadn't been, you wouldn't be watching this video. Your child suffers from PTSD about all those traumatic moments. And no, I'm not exaggerating. We've talked about PCSD being a form of PTSD. And again, I suggest you read the book, Real Love and PCSD. It changes many people's lives. So they would naturally avoid any situation that reminded them of past pain. And you're a reminder of their past pain and their present pain. So I want to talk to you. Very few children, after they get past 4 or 5 years old, go, wow, could we? If they're teenagers, let me know if your child says that. Oh, we're going to sit down and have a talk? You would be a rare bird. And in the past, you have said, when you have said we need to talk, it's almost never been good. Almost without exception. So they're going to feel even more defensive. That's why in the very first sentence you speak, you're stating that you're not going to be critical or demanding. Now, they actually probably won't believe you, but to start, you haven't begun many other conversations like this, so you will at least pique their curiosity. And if your tone matches the words, I'm not going to have a single critical thing to say. It's my tone, as opposed to what you usually hear in association with people protesting that they're not going to be critical, which goes like this. Now, I don't mean to be critical. That's like announcing that you're going to be critical. Now, I'm not trying to find fault. Well, you're about to hear fault. No, the tone is everything. You're not going to hear anything critical from me. Not a thing. No controlling, no demanding, no telling you what to do, not a thing. Your child is very likely to relax. If you deliver this sentence in a loving way, that little segment that I just did a little bit ago, the most important thing you're doing, this will be surprising to you, the most important thing you're doing is listening. Who knew? You must be thinking, to what? I mean, you might be confused that I'm talking about you listening because in this conversation so far, your child hasn't spoken. So how could you be listening? Easy. You're listening to their pain. That's huge. And it's new. There have been many, many occasions before now when you haven't even been aware of their pain, which they translate as not caring about their pain, even though they've been in insufferable anguish. The single thing you can do first, most easily and most effectively in loving your child, I'm going to repeat that. The single thing that you can do first, most easily, and most effectively in loving your child is to listen. Really listen. When you say, I'm not going to tell you what to do, for a change, they're going to catch that last part. You're acknowledging that in the past, you have told them what to do and you have hurt them. See? I'm not going to tell you what to do for a change. You just told a huge truth. Honey, they'll hear it. You have to mean it. You have to practice this till you just dead on mean it. And don't feel guilty. And until your tone sounds like the smooth rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. No kidding. Or they're going to hear criticism. We're usually pretty bad at listening with our kids, like as in, we're awful. They speak and they express their pain in other ways, much more than speaking. Behaviors that are the reason you're here right now. And we usually miss their communications entirely, or we tell them they're wrong, or we try to fix them, or we tell them what to do. In other words, we're deaf. We don't listen. The human species as a whole listens very poorly. Why? Turns out I'm defending us because almost all of us are in pain. When you're in pain as a parent, you become absolutely focused on yourself. Pain makes us selfish, like I've described more than once. When somebody stabs a fork in your leg, the pain narrows your focus to one thing. There's only one thing in the world when somebody stabs you in the leg with a fork, and that's right where the fork is sticking into your leg. And that's not about loving other people. Pain makes us selfish. We focus on our pain. That's more natural than it is selfish. Just does. Now, for the third time, quote, before I say another word, you can relax. I don't have a critical word to say here about you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do for a change, end quote. I'm going to say even more about how you can end that second sentence with "for a change." That's not a little thing. It's not just a conversation add-on. I mentioned it earlier, but now let me underline it. When you say "for a change," you're saying, I have been wrong in the past. That's what you're saying. I'm about to listen to you and be a nice person for a change. It's not just implied. You're stating I've been wrong in the past. There is usually nothing, not one thing that gets the attention of other people, especially your child, that diffuses conflict like those simple and powerful words. I was wrong. Many conflicts are just done. I've done it personally on a great many occasions, more than I care to remember, and there are probably way more than that where I should have or could have. And I've helped other people to do it, and the results are often amazing and immediate. I've watched it. Two people are arguing, husband, wife, parent, child, doesn't matter, or there's simply tension between them, and one of them says, I was wrong. Argument over, tension evaporated. Really. Next sentence. Quote, you've been unhappy for a good while now, and the good news is that I've finally figured out a lot about why. End quote. That's a quote, a segment from that long one that we did, a long one, 4 minutes long or whatever it was, earlier. The words, you've been unhappy, that little quotation, those words are not accusatory. Not if you say them in a tender tone. I mean, hooray. If you say, you've been unhappy for a long time now. Well, it's not going to stop now either. That's an accusation. You've been unhappy and it inconveniences me. But if you say, I can see that you've been unhappy for a good while. And the good news, do you hear my tone? I'm just stating what I'm seeing. You've been unhappy. It indicates an interest in your child, in their happiness, rather than expressing something inconvenient to you. So again, quote, you've been unhappy for a good while now, and the good news is that I've finally figured out a lot about why. The phrase good news is encouraging and hopeful. Who doesn't want to hear good news? And then you finish it off by saying, quote, I've finally figured out a lot about why. You figured out a lot. Not everything. If you say, I've figured it all out, they're going to go, oh, I'll bet you're going to tell me. I bet you're going to share all of your wisdom with me over the next 2 hours. No, you're saying, I've figured out a lot, not all, about why you're hurting. Who wouldn't be interested in that? I would come in the room, in the emergency room, and I'd go, we've figured it out. Oh, an elephant could have gone through the room and they still would have been paying attention to me. I've figured out why you're hurting. Oh, that's really encouraging. And they'll be listening now. Quote, I've finally figured out a lot about why. Finally figured out begs a question from your child, whether it's spoken or not. What did you figure out? I've finally figured this out. And the kid's going to be going. And so then you continue. Quote, I know that I have sometimes blamed you for X, and you name a difficult behavior or an unloving or a painful behavior on the part of your child. Don't do more than 2, or it's going to seem like another list and that you're blaming them again. So I know I've sometimes blamed you for X, sometimes in words, but many times with my frustration and irritation. Now, this is an intentional lead-in sentence. It sets up the next one. And pretty much everybody knows that. Like kind of in a movie. One character says to the other, now, I know you thought that this was going to happen. Well, what's the next word? Everybody knows the next word. But, so I know you thought this was going to happen, and especially if it was a terrible thing, but it's not going to be a terrible thing. And then everybody goes, oh, whew. Like in a love story. I know you thought that I came here because your girlfriend had a big mouth or whatever. I know that you thought I came here to break up with you. As soon as I say, I know you thought that, you're already contradicting whatever follows. Relief, same here. I've blamed you for X in the past, and the blaming hasn't been any real treat. Sometimes in words, but many times with my frustration and irritation, the but is implied. So now what's next? The next thing is what you said earlier in this truth-telling. When I said that the implication was that you were wrong. Now you're directly saying this. I was wrong. Wrong about what? We just said it. Sometimes I've blamed you for whatever, sometimes with words, sometimes with my frustration, sometimes with my irritation. So the kid just got to hear you say, I've been blaming, I've been frustrated, I've been irritated, but, and then the golden sentence, I was wrong. In fact, that's not enough. Let's pound it in with a sledgehammer. I was very wrong. Now, we talked about this a bit earlier. Most children have never heard these words from a parent. No kidding. I was wrong. Never. Because the parent's supposed to know everything, and the parent's the boss of everything. And how can you be the boss if you don't know stuff or if you're wrong? Parents derive a great deal of their power over their children from being right all the time. And we as parents are afraid of being wrong with the child because we firmly believe it will put us in a position of weakness. We think, well, how can I be the parent if I say I'm wrong? But that's not the case. When you say, I was wrong, it is very disarming. It's even endearing. Your child is almost guaranteed to be listening at this point. I was wrong. They've never heard it before. In fact, they might even chime in with, yeah, like, no duh. I was wrong. They might even be stunned. Who are you really in my father or mother's body? When you say you're wrong, yes, one, you get their attention, but there's much more than that happens. Two, when you say you're wrong, you're being honest and vulnerable. How can a child trust a parent who isn't capable of being vulnerable himself? That's a rhetorical question. Three, you're telling the truth about yourself, which is what we've been talking about here. We tell our children to tell the truth about themselves, but then we don't ever set an example of doing the same. I was wrong. That's an example of telling the truth. You're listening. If you're actually admitting you're wrong, then you're finally not defending yourself. You're not being right. And both of those activities separate you from your child like crazy. If you're saying that you're being wrong and you're setting down all of your weapons to defend yourself, what's left? Listening. They really dig that. 5, our goal is to love and teach. That's what I was wrong is. It's you listening, which we identified as the first thing and most effective thing you could do to be loving, and you're not defending, loving again, and you're providing an example of telling the truth. Teaching. I was wrong is loving times 2 and teaching times 1. Oh, what a nice mixture. 6, this is big. You eliminate confusion. If you don't tell your children that their pain is your fault, they can only come to one other conclusion: that it's their fault. This is how children grow up to have no confidence, no sense of adventure or joy, no ability to have relationships because, well, everything's their fault, certainly all their pain, because they believe they're flawed and defective, because you told them they were, whether you meant to or not, and you didn't do anything to correct that initial impression, which is like confirming it. Parents are afraid of losing face with their children by being wrong. Nah. I've seen thousands of conflicts between parents and children resolved in exactly this way, using these words. Suddenly, simply by saying you're wrong, you are approachable and tender, not qualities that your child normally associates with you. This business of being wrong and vulnerable and tender is powerfully effective with children who have every kind of behavioral problems. All those getting and protecting behaviors, all those uses of imitation love, that list of 7 childhood problems that I put up over and over again. As you tell the truth about your mistakes, your flaws, you being wrong, it addresses children who have all of those things, or do all of those things, or do combinations of them. This addresses your specific child's specific problem. Now let's look at the next sentence from the longer quote, your first truth-telling. Quote, I've been learning some stuff about parenting, and now I know, or you could say it, now I realize, that all you ever wanted from me was love. Now, there's kind of a mixed bag here. When you say, I've been learning some stuff, it indicates that you're willing to be wrong and willing to learn. So this is potentially encouraging. Then you say, I know all you wanted was love. Oh, that just almost always causes confusion because the word love has so many meanings, and you have claimed to love them in the past. So now, potential confusion. So just live with it. We're going to keep going because you're going to have hundreds of opportunities to further explain each of these sentences. Do not suffer under the confusion yourself that you're going to say all of this one time and your child's going to go, oh, well, now I get it. Throw their arms around you and say, oh, all this time you've loved me and you just didn't know how. That's never happened that I've known ever. When you say, I know all you wanted was love, that's potentially confusing because of those meanings and because of the way that you've behaved in the past. Still works overall. Parenthetical note here. If need be, if you're nervous, and that's likely, put this initial conversation, all the points of the initial conversation, write out the whole thing, whatever it takes, on a card or a piece of paper. If you need to, read it. Really. You say, hey, to start with, I've been learning some things and I wrote them down because they were so important and I don't want to forget them. So I'm going to read some of them. Why? Because your confidence increases because you have it there in front of you. If you're worried about, oh gosh, what was that last sentence? What's the next one? Yeah, you're not going to come across as sincere. You're going to be distracted by the fear of forgetting. So I'm just saying, don't worry about getting all this right. Do parts of it, read it, whatever it takes so you feel comfy. If a kid looks quizzical, like, you've seen that look, like, what? Or asks about your reading some of it, like, why are you reading this to me? Because, I mean, other than bedtime stories, you don't normally do this. You say, oh, like I said, I'm just learning this stuff that I'm telling you. So I need the help. New fragment, quote, I know I've claimed to love you in the past, but the kind of love you needed, the love you still need, is unconditional love. When you say, quote, I've claimed to love you again, it implies a willingness to be wrong. But your child will begin to get uncomfortable right about here. I'm just warning you so that when you see them looking at you like, what do you mean you've claimed to love me, because that implies that you haven't loved me. That's going to rock their whole world, because look how many times you have put them to bed or whatever and said, I love you. And now you're coming back and going, it could sound like this to a kid. Oh, I was just joking. I didn't mean it back then. Now I mean it, but I didn't mean it then. So be prepared for some confusion here. Children don't know any other way to live than how they were raised. We simply defined love for them as how we raised them. That's what love is. It's how we raised them. And they believed us even when they sensed something was missing or something was wrong. Because you defined their universe, they won't easily let you change the definition, even though you started the definition. Get it? If you've said 2 + 2 is 5 their entire lives, and you come along and just, casually say, oh, yeah, I was wrong, it's 4. They have a whole lot of memories of 5. In their little heads, 2 + 2 is 5. And now you're coming along and they're thinking that you're the stupid one because you've forgotten the rules. You're hinting here again that you were wrong and that your definition of love was wrong. And although that's a good thing to tell them, you're rocking the foundation of their world. So many children at this point begin to defend their parents, at the very least in their heads. When I talk to adults and I say, well, how was your family? Oh, my parents were so loving. And it turns out within 5 minutes, we learned that they were abusive or neglectful or whatever. We were taught to defend them because, what does it say about you if your own parents don't love you? Family first. We got to defend our families. So they're going to begin to defend you. The kids do it when they talk to me. They defend you. And when I say that their parents didn't love them unconditionally, they go, well, no, they did. They start to defend their parents because 1, their parents told them that they loved them. And 2, if they entertain that their own parents didn't love them, what does it say about them? Who walks around and goes, even my own mother didn't love me? Nobody did. It's too shaming. And you've introduced a new phrase, unconditional love. Most people have never even heard of that. Certainly haven't seen it. So they're going to need an explanation of that, right quick. They will not know what you're talking about, unconditional love. So now you're going to define it in the very next sentence, or you're going to leave them just hanging on this unfamiliar phrase. So you say, quote, unconditional love means that I care about you without wanting anything from you in return. And I have not done that. You are plowing right ahead with rocking this kid's world. Repeat the sentence to them. This is the foundation of a great deal that follows, so they really do need to understand this. And then you say a bold thing, the natural conclusion to the sentence before it, where you said that you had claimed to love them. You say, I haven't done that. Wow. This is being brave and open and vulnerable on your part. And they're going to be a little uncomfortable because you're talking about something they don't know anything about. They might defend you. They might just look at you like, can I go out and play now? When they defend you, they're really defending themselves, since they're part of your world, the world you created for them. But you can't let up here. You have to launch right into proving that you have not unconditionally loved them. So what's the next sentence? Because right now, they're really uneasy. You say, quote, how do I know that I've wanted something from you and not loved you without conditions or unconditionally? Children are almost always asked questions that involve some accusation of them, like, why is this room not clean? It ends with a question mark, but it is not a question. It's an accusation. Or test questions at school. They call them test questions, but what happens if you get one wrong? Well, then the teacher takes this enormous, arm-sized red pen or crayon and circles it, which says, "You're stupid." So it looks like a question, but it's really an accusation of what you don't know. But here, you're doing something different from what they've ever seen. You're asking a question of yourself about a potential failure on your part. You just said, "How do I know that I've wanted something from you and not loved you unconditionally?" Well, the kid's going to be on the edge of his seat going, "I don't know, but I'm dying to hear about it." Because the words "I was wrong" are already unfamiliar. Now you're going to prove you were wrong. Oh, this is just getting downright fascinating to them. You say, quote, "Because when you didn't behave like I wanted, I got disappointed and irritated." Yeah, they're going to get that. They've been there. They were there for those. And you continue and say, "There is no disappointment or impatience or irritation in unconditional love." Whoa, kill me. Every child identifies with being the object of disappointment and irritation. They've all heard it. The disappointed words, the sighs, the shrugging, you screw up and the parents go, "Oh," and drop their shoulders. They roll their eyes and more. So when you bring up disappointment and irritation, you're getting their attention again, but you still haven't explained how your behavior makes you not loving in this new weird way, this unconditional way that they're trying to get their head around. So now you're going to explain it. "When I was angry," this sentence is just critical because they're not going to buy this unconditional love idea till you get to this. "When I was angry, I was thinking about myself." Even though they've probably never heard this before, and it might seem a little strange, there's something in there that just seems innately true. When I was angry, I was thinking about myself. Anger is always selfish, you say. "And I hurt you." Now, you just put together, anger is always selfish, and I hurt you. They know that last part, that you've hurt them when you're disappointed and irritated. And now you're explaining that was selfish of you. It's like, now let the angels sing. You continue. "When I was angry, I was caring about me more than you, so you felt like I didn't care about you. You were right. I hurt you a lot." And there you have it. Once again, you are loving and teaching. It's beautiful. It's loving because you're profoundly caring about your child in the very delivery of this message. It's teaching because you're defining love in a way that will change the rest of their life. Anger is selfish. Quote, "I've been angry at you a lot. It was not loving. I hurt you." End quote. You could even explain that the ways that anger is all about you. It's all about, "Look what you didn't do for me. Look what you did to me. How could you forget that I was the most important person in the universe?" You explain to them that anger is me, 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 and that that's what you did. You just rocked your kids' world. It changes everything. All of their lives without meaning to, you've communicated your disappointment and anger at your kids. And each time you made it their fault. What parent ever gets angry at a child and then says, "I'm angry because I was never loved myself. So I was never happy. I was overwhelmed and found everything more than I can handle. So now if there's any inconvenience at all, like you do something my Royal Highness doesn't like, I'm in so much pain that I have to do something to diminish it. I get angry or critical or whatever because it makes me feel less powerless, makes me feel more powerful. And you're pretty easy to blame because I'm, bigger and stronger and you can't fight back as well as I can." End quote. What parent ever says that after they're angry? Yeah, it'd be none. So we not only get angry at our children and communicate the I don't love you message, but we blame them for causing the anger in 100 different ways, spoken and not. It's insane of us and hurtful to them, which you just admitted. But here you are saying that the old message, I'm angry and you caused it, simply is not true. You're clearing up confusion that they've lived with all their lives. They are finally understanding that their pain and confusion was not their fault. Want to guess how relieved they're going to feel? And now we're back to the question we asked much earlier. Why do we tell the truth about ourselves ever? Well, one is to find real love, but no, not with your children. Why do we tell the truth about ourselves to our children? To increase understanding and decrease confusion. This is huge, increasing their understanding. And now they're not confused. To diffuse conflict, because your child's in conflict with you because you're being a jerk and you're not admitting to it. And now here you are admitting it, and they're not going to fight you anymore. You're being open and vulnerable. You're not holding weapons in your hands, so they will tend to drop theirs. And another huge effect, another huge reason to tell the truth, it increases trust. So far, you've accomplished all those purposes of truth-telling with this first truth-telling with your children. You could summarize it pretty easy. I was wrong. Sure, I did my best loving you, but I wasn't raised with that kind of unconditional love, and nobody ever taught me how to give it to you as a parent. This is the last part of the truth-telling. So I was lost. My very best attempts to love you were not good enough. End quote. Wow. What would any of us have given to hear that from a parent when we were children? One of the reasons for telling the truth, again, understanding. Kids hate confusion. And here you are saying, I did try to love you. Not an excuse, just a fact. I tried. I didn't know how. There's nothing to feel bad about there. Like I said, I still don't know how to play hockey from the last time I told you. Why did I not know how? Nobody showed me. To be a parent, we're not talking about hockey now. So I was lost. You just told them that. Children, you would think that would undermine their confidence in you to say, I'm lost. No, now they trust you more. Because you don't trust somebody who's always right, because they're lying. And then you say, my best wasn't good enough. It just wasn't. I'm pretty good at directions. I personally can follow a map anywhere. When I was a little kid, I thought maps were just about the coolest thing there was. I know, weird kid. And yet, if you asked me to go from right here out the door and go through the woods, which surround the place, and go straight to Montana without a map, yeah, I'm not that good. Pretty good with directions, pretty good notion of geography of the country, and I would miss Montana from here. That's a long way. I'm just not good enough. Do I feel bad about that? No. I don't know anybody personally who could do that. I just can't. And that's what you're telling your kids. I just couldn't do it. Now, at this point, I've seen hundreds of children of all ages just think or say after their parents have said what I just said that you would be saying, or I've said it for parents who were dead or could never say it. So whether the parents are saying it to the child or I'm saying it for the parents who are not available or dead, I've seen hundreds of children respond, holy smokes, you're kidding. This explains everything in my life. Are you seeing the effect that you're having by loving and teaching your kids? They go, I needed to feel loved more than anything, but my parents did not know how. Who knew? So I've been drowning. I've been dying of thirst. We've got two metaphors here now. And nobody knew what to do. Then they continue. So this is why I've been miserable. They finally got an explanation. They say, so this is why I'm angry. So this is why I cut myself or use drugs or have the symptoms of ADHD or whatever. See how important all these basic principles are that we've been teaching up to this point? Sometimes with what seems like crazy repetition, because until we really get them, we can't teach this stuff to our kids. And once they do understand this stuff, it's like coming out of a cave. The cave we've been talking about, that they've been living in. And they go, I get it now. It's a really big step. I did this with a 40-year-old woman this morning. I played the part of her parents and said something like this. I don't do scripts, but I said something like this, and she just wept and said, I get my whole life now. I get why I'm having trouble with my kids, and on and on. And then the kids continue and they say, and now my parents are telling me this to help me, or if I'm saying it for the parents, or at least they would have if they could have. They want to learn how to be better parents, or if they're not available, they would have wanted to. Stunning. This changes a child's life, what I just said. All of this truth-telling, but especially that last little part. Now, not all children do this, really. That would be nice. If you could just say this and all children would go, oh, now I get it. Throw their arms around you and say, you've just been trying to love me and didn't know how, and kissed your cheek. Well, that'd be cool. Not all children do. Many are confused. Many are still angry. Many are still in pain. Many simply don't believe you, especially the first time you tell them the truth. After you taught them that conditional love was the way the world was all their lives, for them and for everybody, from the time they were born, and after you inflicted wounds on them from their infancy, imagine. Sometimes they just don't trust you when you finally do tell the truth. It's pretty out of character for you, actually. And it's pretty weird for them to hear because they've never heard anybody tell the truth like this. Not their friends, not their teachers, not their friends' parents, not you, nobody. So it's a little strange the first time. That's why I said, you're going to have to say this more than once. Not the whole thing, but little parts here and there. And I'll give you clues when are some good times to say little parts of it. So, fine. They have every reason to justify their distrust. You've suddenly changed the rules and even the definitions of life a lot in 4 minutes. That's a lot to take. Now, you have to be as loving as you can be. Persist. Keep getting love and support, as I described extensively in chapter 2. Go back and see it again. You'll get more out of it every time. And as you persistently and consistently love and teach, almost invariably, there are some kids who just will not let go of what they've been taught in the past, but depends on their age a lot. But almost invariably, they begin to trust you. They see that what you're saying is beginning to match the way you behave for the first time. And they're going, maybe. Well, it's a start. Where else can you start but the start? If you're consistent and sincere, and you don't try to do this alone, you got a chance. That's why we're providing so many resources so you don't have to do it alone. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm loving and teaching you, as I said to the woman this morning. I'm sitting here loving and teaching you exactly like you can now go and love and teach your children. And you could just see the light turn on in her head. Oh, like this. People often ask me, well, I don't understand how to teach them this. And I say, I've been showing you how for the last hour or 2 or 3 or however long we've been together. This is life-changing for your children and for you. Now, again, one of the segments from the first truth-telling. I hurt you. That was a really tiny segment. Now, you already said this. I promise you that you'll be saying it many times. Why? Remember the reasons for truth-telling. One is to foster trust. You can't facilitate a child trusting you or anybody else. Well, you can't make them, but you can facilitate trust by creating a place where it's much more likely for them to trust you. And see, if you're telling the truth about your mistakes, it hurt you and I'm the cause. That's a safer place for them to be than for you to be right and be attacking them by, a lot. I hurt you is a powerful way to foster trust and connection. Try it with your partner. Your partner's clearly not happy during an interaction with you, and you take your partner in your arms and you say, I was wrong, and I hurt you. I encourage you today, if you have a partner, hit the pause, write this down, that you're going to go do this with your partner. Now, the first truth-telling, you're going to set up a time with your child, but try it with your partner, just as a test, if you have one. I was wrong. I hurt you. Oh, my goodness. Just dissolve in tears. Connection, which is what they need. And understanding. Without understanding that you hurt them, what do they have left? The only thing they can conclude is that it's their fault. They blame themselves. They feel guilty and less worthwhile for the rest of their lives because you taught them first. So it's huge when you tell them that you hurt them and you were wrong. Now they can begin to see the world as it is and can begin to learn to find happy. This is big stuff. You may not have noticed it yet, but all the talking we've done up to now has made now possible. Some of the things that you think, why is he saying this again? Or why is he saying that? Yeah, it doesn't make sense for every single person because there's no single way to teach everybody that's best for every single person in the group. It's just not possible. But all the stuff we've been talking about has been to get us to this place where we can begin to understand this stuff to do with our children, even though we've been doing examples all along. Yep. It all interconnects. That's why I keep saying, just hang on, keep going. If they feel understood and they understand their pain for the first time and they trust you, where's the conflict? And that was one of the other reasons for telling the truth. It diffuses conflict. So we just did understanding and confusion and fostering trust and diffusing conflict with one example. I was wrong. I hurt you. There. You just accomplished all of it. It's really pretty simple, which isn't the same as easy. Saying you hurt them and that you were wrong can change the rest of their lives. Now, next little bit from the first truth-telling. Quote, it's no wonder that you've avoided me and been angry at me. It's no wonder that you've X, whatever behavior has been most destructive. It's no wonder that you've used drugs. Kids couldn't even imagine in their entire lives hearing this from an adult. Well, of course you use drugs. I say that to people every single day in some way. Somebody will call me and say, I've been a porn addict for 25 years. And I go, well, duh, of course. They go, what do you mean? I said, well, you've been in pain for your whole life. You had to do something. And for whatever reason, you were taught not to use drugs in some particularly violent way, or you found this way and it worked. So you stuck with it. You're at the very least persistent. Of course we treat our pain. Your kid has been feeling guilty, angry, lost, alone, confused, and more. Did you get that? That's awful. Your kid's been in anguish. What you just said, that you understand why they've been behaving as they have, says, I get it. I get you. I didn't get it before, but now I do. Now at least a little bit. I get you. I get why you've been behaving like this. This is a miracle for them because they don't get them. They haven't understood why they've been acting like this. And here you are saying, here's the reason. I hurt you. I could pause here for an hour as you just thought about this, and it would be fitting. It's that big. And you're also saying it's not your fault. No, it's because I hurt you when you were so young that it embedded the hurt so deep down in your guts that it's been eating you up for the rest of your life. And in response, you had to do something. So you became addicted to your phone, or you're angry or petulant or difficult, or you have all the symptoms of ADHD, which is just pain, and on. So yeah, it's not your fault. Now your child can finally say, for the first time, oh, now I get it too. I didn't get it before, but now I do. This is not to justify a child's behavior. It's not to say, oh, it's not your fault, so it's okay to go ahead and keep being angry, break the law, be addicted, cut yourself. No, that's not what you're saying. And they're not stupid. They know that's not what you're saying because they're not happy doing any of those things. They know that. Parents say, well, I can't say it's my fault because then I would be condoning it. And I just roll my eyes and go, did you catch the eye roll? That means that's ridiculous. You're just saying it's not your fault because they've been blaming themselves or blaming you. And now they're finally getting confirmation. Yep, it was you. It just explains their behavior to them so they understand it correctly instead of blaming themselves and feeling bad about themselves and somehow just wildly blaming you, but not understanding why they are. That doesn't work either. This is an example of the magic of the phrase, it's no wonder. I see people from all around the world, all over, they come from everywhere. They talk about all the pain in their lives, their nightmare stories. And when I say some variation on, well, yeah, of course you made that choice, that incredibly harmful and what looks to outside people as a really stupid choice, I say, of course you made that choice. Or it's no wonder because of their pain. And they go, every one of them goes, does some version of, or they look at me in stark wonder. What did you just say? I say, well, of course you did. It's no wonder. Their relief fills the room like a white hot light in the damp darkness of the cave. When you say it's no wonder that you've done blah, 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 they hear, he understands me. Hallelujah. Wow. Nobody else has. Keep in mind, their peers have never understood them either. They just get together and they bond on the basis of how they're reacting. Like a bunch of billiard balls being herded into a corner. They're not bonded. They were just shoved there. And they say, when I say to them, well, it's no wonder, usually to themselves, but sometimes out loud, so it's really not my fault? This truth-telling can produce immediate understanding and trust and connection. Might take time. You will have to repeat it because you're going to have to explain parts of it. And remember, I told you right from the beginning, I've been explaining these itty-bitty little segments of the first truth-telling so you'd understand them and so you could explain them to them later. When they say, what do you mean by that part where you said, and you go, hang on a second, I've got to go back to the training. And there's an explanation there. Or maybe you'll remember. Many parents have said to me, well, I did this. I did the first truth-telling. Nothing happened. There's almost like a petulant little thing, just like their children do, by the way. No surprise. Well, you think? So you've been hurting them and not telling them the truth for, let's make up a number, 15 years. And now you tell them the truth once, and they don't go, oh, makes perfect sense. Hallelujah. And sit in lotus position under the banyan tree. Not likely. Not after 15 years of the other stuff. Most of the things I'm saying here to your child, for you, have to be said multiple times and in multiple ways. Your kids have never heard the truth from you. Not really. You didn't know the truth. There's no blaming here. So they might not fall into a condition of complete trust immediately. No kidding. Next little segment. Quote, I can't promise you that I won't get irritated again. Remember that part? But I can tell you that I'm learning how not to repeat the past. End quote. This statement of not promising to stop all anger makes you more credible. They're not going to suddenly change their lives because you told the truth once, and you ain't going to change yours because you've heard the truth a couple of times. You're just not. Well, you will to some degree, but completely, not a chance. You're going to be working on this the rest of your life. There's simply no way you can hurt your child thousands of times, and you have. But now that you understand, you're not just suddenly going to stop. Oh, I'll never do it again. Pfft, impossible. The pattern is too well established. There's too much what athletes would call muscle memory. There's too much, in your case, emotional memory there for you to just suddenly change. Way too much. But you're willing to learn. You just said that. And that's all you can do, baby. I'm willing to learn. In fact, I can tell you, as a parent or as a partner or as a person, people sometimes ask me, what's the difference between the people who get this and change their lives and the people who don't? And I say, that's easy. Willingness. They're similar, but it's willingness and trust. If you're really willing to learn and you trust who's teaching you, you can learn a lot of things. If you're not willing and you don't trust, wow, that's the end of that. You're not going to learn anything. You did your best. Now I'm talking to you. This isn't part of the truth telling to your child. You screwed up badly, or you wouldn't be here. And now you're going to learn to not be perfect. You're going to learn to, it's an odd phrase, screw up less. And eventually, even love your child. But we got to go through screwing up less first. That is the best you could possibly do. And you're here showing a commitment to doing that, to being willing, just by watching this. If you're hearing this, you're willing. And I'm going, I'm proud of you. It's like you're a hero to me. Because most parents just go, I'm the parent, suck it up, and I can do whatever I want, and you have to obey me. Oh, yeah, that's going to work. It gives you huge credibility to say what I said earlier, that you're going to say to your child, which means, the part where you say, I'm learning how. I'm not going to promise I'm going to never do this again. it means they're more likely to trust you. It's heaven to start with. Now, the next little bit from the first truth telling, quote, I'll be talking to you more often about what I'm learning, and you might even notice me behaving differently. You don't need to be hurt anymore. Message? First, before I talk about the message, each time I make comments after the slide, which I've said before, highlighting and emphasizing each sentence of this truth-telling to your child, I'm giving you additional things to say to your children, not just increasing your understanding of what I've said. You get to use this stuff. Hopefully you will. There will be opportunities to use this stuff. Now, back to the message, repeating. I'll be talking to you more often about what I'm learning, and you might even notice me behaving differently. You don't need to be hurt anymore. Well, there's a lot in this. So what are you saying? This conversation isn't a one-time deal. You're going to be talking to him again. After hurting you thousands of times, this is part of the message you're saying. This is implied. I don't claim that it's just going to go away. I will continue to make mistakes. You'll wonder if you can trust me. And these are things that later you can say. I'm just amplifying, giving you additional stuff. That trust that you will eventually develop will grow as I just keep learning. I'm in this for the long haul. This isn't a one-time deal. I'm in this until it works. How can your child know that you're in this for the long haul? Because they want to know. After all, you've heard them over the long haul. And now here's this one-time declaration of the truth, and they're going, we'll see. How can they know? Well, one, if you keep learning and loving, and two, because you just said, you don't need to be hurt anymore. Let me translate that last one. It could also be said this way. I care enough about you that I don't want to hurt you anymore. I love you. That's what that says. You don't need to be hurt anymore is the most believable way. At this point, you could say, I love you. You notice that in the first truth telling, I didn't have the sentence, I love you. Did you notice that? It's not there because they won't believe you. But if you say variations on it, I was wrong, I hurt you, I'm going to learn how to love you, you don't need to be hurt anymore by me, that all translates to I love you. They won't realize that probably. It's subtle, it's a running subtext, but boy, it's a powerful message that you're communicating to them. They'll feel it more than hear it. And then you conclude with, do you have any questions or anything you just want to say? So what's the message? Yeah, you talked for like 4 minutes straight. So big deal. You've talked longer than that before. You're saying this is not a monologue like I usually do with you or a lecture. I'm really interested in listening to you, which is part of loving you, something I didn't know that I was failing to do. This is so cool. Again, we're going to call this first truth-telling conversation with your child, where you admit your role in their pain, either the first truth-telling, or we're going to call it the first loving and teaching, and who knows, I'll forget and call it the initial one, or you'll know what I'm talking about. The first truth-telling, the initial truth-telling, the initial loving and teaching, something, one of those, because I forget what I call things. It's an example of the pattern you're going to be repeating a lot, loving and teaching, which involves what? What's loving and teaching? Telling the truth about yourself, often, but eventually you're going to be telling the truth about them. They're going to have to trust you before you can do much more of that. Vulnerability First yours. You're going to show them what vulnerability looks like, and then they're going to come to be more vulnerable with you. Honesty, willingness to learn, which you're demonstrating considerably just by this first truth telling. Kindness, listening, absolutely no getting and protecting, zero. Because if you say any of this and you're impatient or you're annoyed, it doesn't matter what your lips are saying, is they're flapping. All they're hearing is that you're being right and defending yourself and you don't care about them. And loving and teaching is guidance. Now, after this first loving and teaching, you're just warming up. This is a start. This is like the starter's gun. Boom, let's go. Let's start with that. There's lots more to know and do for you and for them. You can't just have that initial conversation and expect your child to suddenly heal. They might suddenly get some awareness. I've indicated to you that most people go, especially if I say it to them, because I can do it without being irritated. I have no reason to be. They might understand it, but suddenly heal, that takes a little longer. I had some major back surgery, and they suddenly fixed a structural defect in my back. They did that. But the healing, that took a lot longer and hurt. They won't suddenly heal from a lifetime of wounds and be happy. There's way more to do. We'll compare it to somebody like coming into the emergency room with multiple wounds or bizarre and vague pains. I've been there since I worked in emergency rooms. I make the diagnosis. Let's say I'm the emergency room doctor. You talk about it, or you be the doctor with your child. You make the diagnosis. You just did in the first truth telling. You talk about it, and then the treatment begins. And this list is just to acquaint you with what you'll be doing after the first truth telling. So after the first loving and teaching or truth telling, lots of things are going to happen, including you're going to schedule future conversations. You're going to schedule them on your calendar. We'll get to that in a minute. The goal of all this, is them feeling loved, them learning to be loving, and your children learning to be responsible, which invariably leads to happiness. That comes after the initial truth telling, in fact, over and over again. You continue to love and teach, and sometimes use consequences. You teach them that want is not the same as need. Remember, I'm just giving you the headlines. We're going to get into details. And you're going to say these words, which are going to scare you to death the first time, because it's almost like saying, please hit me. You're going to say, tell me when I'm angry. In the moment that I'm angry, I would be grateful if you would tell me. So those are just the headlines. Now we're going to talk about each of these. Schedule future conversations, like on a calendar. You're going to meet with your child regularly. Now, this is going to be in addition to the family meetings that are talked about in the Real Love and Parenting book. Go to the index, you'll see family meetings listed there twice at least. You're going to learn about those. If you have only one child, then, why I use the word only? If you have one child, you got a lot of kids. If you have one child, then scheduling these meetings with your child can be the same thing as the family meeting. If you have 5 kids, I feel sorry for you because I know what that's like. You're going to have family meetings with all of them because there are principles that apply to all of them together. Actually, I still have 7 kids, but so the family meetings are for the whole family. Then you're going to have individual meetings with each child because every kid is different. They can't just be one of the kids. Try that sometime. If you have 7 kids and just say, yeah, that's one of my kids, and watch their face. Nobody likes to be just one of something. They like to be themselves. You're going to meet with your child regularly, several times a week. Now, this could sound burdensome. Oh my gosh, my schedule's already full. Oh no, these are very casual meetings, but they're scheduled, which means you set aside time for them and you tell the child when the next meeting is going to happen. Don't tell them we're going to meet every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from noon to 3 p.m. They'll just fall over dead because they have other things they'd rather do. At the meeting that you're having, you simply tell them when the next meeting is going to be. And you work it out with them. I mean, what if they got swim practice during that time or whatever? They're casual. If you make this a lecture session with a chalkboard, you're dead. And they're short. My meetings with my kids were typically 5. In the beginning, you're looking at 3 to 5 minutes. And then eventually, as they become more teachable and they trust you more, you work your all the way up to maybe 10 minutes. And that's a long one, really. Family meetings can be a little longer because there's more stuff involved in scheduling of it. You're going to meet with your child regularly to follow up on this initial truth-telling. See, I told you I'd call it something else before long, the first truth-telling. To follow up on it, on the individual components, to see if they understand them, to use real-life examples from, like an hour ago of you doing something that you talked about in the truth-telling, until you show that you can see when you do it. This is just words to them. They're going, blah, blah, blah. Mom or dad read a book about parenting, and so I'm going to have to suffer through them failing to do it. And then they're going to find another one. So this is going to really require some follow-up, but it's short, or you're going to lose them. Learn how to have family meetings. I told you how to do that. They have their own purpose, but they're still about loving and teaching. You're going to schedule it, and as soon as you say the word schedule, people picture limiting or rigid. No, I have a schedule all the time. In fact, right now as I speak, my calendar, my schedule, is within reach of my right hand. No kidding. It's always that close. Why? To, regiment myself, to be rigid and accomplish things? No, because what goes on my calendar, what goes on my schedule, those are the most important things. And that's what you're going to tell your child. I told you I'd be giving you little support materials to give you to support what you're going to tell them in the first truth telling. I calendared this because you're most important to me. Things that are not most important, I just put on a list of stuff that I need to do, and I'll get to it. Like just the other day, my little sweetie, Donna, had mentioned that there was a little metal flap at the bottom of a door. She wanted it fixed. And I went, fix the metal flap. And, well, I forgot. So then I put it on the list of things to do. But there's a lot of things on the list to do, and so it stayed there. Because to me, I'm looking at this little metal flap, which is sticking out from the wood by, this far, and I'm going, who cares? And the answer to that is, she does. So today, it's on my schedule. It has a time that it's going to be fixed. I'm guessing it's going to happen today because I won't go to bed till it's done. I didn't realize how important it was. I missed the cues the first time. So you're going to be telling your kid that you're scheduling it because they're important. And don't oppress them with long anythings. What could sound worse than we're going to meet every day for 2 hours. So one at a time, but at least 2 to 3 times a week. Maybe sometimes when you're doing something fun, we're going to go out to Dairy Queen or something. And you talk to them for 5 minutes while and then they babble about whatever for the rest of the time that it takes to consume a whatever, Dairy Queen. You tell them that at these meetings, you're going to talk about this kind of stuff, the kind of stuff that you talked about earlier at the first truth telling, so that you don't surprise them, so that you don't just sit down with them to watch TV and then just, accidentally bump the remote. And now you're talking about teaching them about life. And they're going, oh, so Dad's going to trick me into doing this. No. Hence scheduling and making it clear. So what are you going to talk about? Read the book, Real Love and Parenting. Review this ridiculously effective parenting training. There's tons of stuff to talk to the kid about, because you're going to see your mistakes and you're going to talk about those. You're also going to see some mistakes they're making that are hurting them, and you're going to talk about those. And I've already given you some examples, actually quite a few, of how to talk to your kids about their mistakes. And I'm going to give you more. I'm going to keep giving you resources to do this so that you can. I'm not just going to tell you, well, go love and teach your child and do it right. That's not enough. So another thing that we do after the first loving and teaching, the goal of all of this is what? Happiness. That's the goal of our family. That's your goal as a person. And that's your goal to help teach them, because that's your job. Why are we doing all this stuff? Because we're not as happy as we could be. That's your answer. Because they're going to say, why do we have to do all this stuff? We're not as happy as we could be. And there's nothing better than happiness. Nothing else in the world produces happiness. People with money have proven that doesn't do it. Money, sex, power, number of Facebook followers, all of those people many of whom have ended up killing themselves, have proven that that isn't it. So it's feeling loved and being loving and being responsible. And I'm going to teach you the course in life that I screwed up and didn't teach you before now. That's why we're doing this. And they might still go, just because they, have to feel like they're in control. Well, let them. This isn't some program or set of rules that you're teaching them. They just go to sleep right then. This is the beginning of one of the most important courses anybody will ever take. And I've said this before. We take algebra and trigonometry and history and grammar, most of which we'll never use again. You can especially hear that we didn't remember our grammar as you watch people write and listen to them speak. Sorry, it's a personal thing grammar is just disappearing. We seldom use the things that we were taught in school. When was the last time that you were asked, when did they sign the Magna Carta? Well, most people don't even know what you're talking about. Most people don't know where it was signed, what country, or what it was, and nobody knows the year unless they're a historian. And yet we had to memorize that thing. So we had to learn all that stuff, but we didn't get taught the course that we need every day, the one called life, all caps. The life course teaches us, this is stuff that I'm giving you stuff for your understanding, and so you can tell it to your child. Again, the life course teaches us to feel loved, to be loving, to be responsible, all of which leads to the happiness we want more than anything. And that's why I'm teaching you this stuff. That's why I'm meeting with you several times a week. It's the life course that matters most. You're going to go, what difference does it make? Yeah. And then you're going to get a partner. Or then you're going to have a child. And then you're going to come crawling back on your hands and knees over broken glass to me and say, now will you teach me the life course? Every parent goes, oh, why did nobody teach me how to do this? And you're telling your kid this. You're saying, I care enough about you that we're going to do it now so you don't have to crawl hands and knees over broken glass. Hallelujah. Isn't that sweet of me? Which will get a smile or a really deep frown. Without happiness, all the other courses are relatively useless. Who cares? Who in the world cares how much algebra you know if you're miserable? Would you care? No. I can tell you that from personal experience. We might try this experiment. You ask your child, that you're sitting together on the couch, you pause the TV, not sneakily, you pause the TV. We'll talk about what to say in a minute. Or you ask for just a brief break. You say, I need you to be off your smartphone in 5 minutes. You say, so that means at 1:15, and I need to talk to you. You just simply to ask, you're simple asking to talk in a kind tone. You're asking, you're saying, I would like to talk to you in 5 minutes. Just your tone is odd. So they'll tend to listen. And you teach lessons like this. I'm not telling you to go do exactly this, but sort of am, because you have very little experience in teaching the life course, so I'm showing you how it's done. I've been doing it with you, by the way, from the beginning of this training, teaching you the life course. But in your first lesson, you might even say, so would you prefer to be happy or miserable? That's almost kind of rhetorical, right? And yet kids, watch them. They feel trapped by what appears to be a setup, as though it were a rhetorical question. They're just going, okay, what's the answer you want? Because that's how you've taught them in the past. Or can they avoid the trap that you just set? They might even say miserable, just to test you, to see if you're going to get out of this Zen-like state. Okay, so if they answer miserable, what do? Don't say, that's the wrong answer. Or, oh no, you don't mean it. You just laugh. You go, okay, yeah, right, everybody wants to be miserable. Did you see my face? Oh yeah, right, of course, everybody wants to be miserable. What am I doing? I'm laughing at their answer. I'm mocking their answer, but I'm doing it kindly. I'm not mad. I'm not impatient. I'm not annoyed. And the most likely response on their part, because I've done this hundreds of times, is they're going to laugh with you. You've got them. And they know it. So just keep going. Forget the fact that they said miserable. You go, obviously, everybody wants to be happy. Of course they want to be happy. And then you tell them that from now on, the family goal is happiness. This doesn't take a long time, this conversation. You can time however long it takes me to teach it to you. Our family goal is happiness. How could that possibly be a bad thing? So far, I've been doing little parenthetical comments, but so far this entire conversation has taken 60 seconds. Then you say that every rule, every conversation, every interaction in your family, or between you and the child, that might be the family, has to contribute to your family goal, which you just established. They just can't fight family goal being happy, including them. And you tell that to them. When I say that family goal is to be happy, it's not just making me happy because I'm the dad or I'm the mom. No, you happy too. So everything that we do, every conversation, every interaction has to contribute to that goal, or how are we going to reach it? Yeah? If your goal is to reach the top of Everest, which is insanely difficult, if your goal is to do that, and you spend all of your time shooting pool down at Bob's and drinking beer, you are not going to get to the top of Everest. There are very rigid plans and schedules and training. It goes on in order for you to be able to do that. Same with a family, except that we're not going to make them rigid and miserable. But everything has to contribute toward that goal. That's how goals are met, is taking steps toward them. So, done. Here's all I've said so far. Happiness is our family goal, and everything we do is a step toward it. This whole conversation is really just that sentence. And you might repeat it for emphasis. It's kind of unarguable, isn't it? If you want to be a heart surgeon, you don't take classes in how to break into cars as part of your schooling, because that's going to detract from your goal of being a heart surgeon. Same in the family. I'm just giving you metaphors, things you can say if they object, or to cement the idea. But don't make this first conversation more than 5 minutes. Don't. You're all working toward a lifetime goal of happiness. This ends more arguments than you can possibly imagine, to tell your child that your interest is in their happiness, not just yours. And I'll be illustrating this in a lot of different ways in subsequent chapters and in the rest of this one. Briefly, as an example, 2 kids are fighting, or one kid is exceeding his screen time by a lot, which he knows. They always look, when you say to them, have you gone past your screen time? And they always look at you with amazing wonder. I don't understand, Father. When they want something, suddenly they become brilliant and they know the time exactly. If we're leaving for Disney World, they know what time it is. So 2 kids are fighting, a kid is exceeding his screen time. You might discuss fighting or screen time, yeah, but we talked about how to discuss whining, for example, in the sales page, which is chapter 0. I'm giving you a shorthand approach to pretty much any kind of conflict like this. You simply say, because remember, we have established the family rule is what? Happiness. And everything we do is to contribute to that. So whatever the kid's doing, you simply say, one approach, does this contribute, quote, does this contribute to the happiness that we talked about that we want in our family? Now, don't be delusional and think that if you say that sentence, every child is going to go, oh, golly, I forgot. No. Thank you, Father. Not going to happen. It will take practice for you to learn when to say this. It will take practice for them to trust you. It will take practice for you to learn with what tone to say it. If you say, so, does this contribute to the happiness that we talked about? That's the goal in our family? You will fail. You will fail miserably. You will fall on your face in the gravel. But we're going to keep practicing. I'm going to give you additional ways to say something like this, ways to embellish it. There's so much to learn to be a good parent. I showed you that list of things to do after the first truth-telling. And one of them from that list was love and teach, and sometimes use consequences. You're going to be using this one a lot, and I'm going to be saying it a lot. Your entire job is to love and teach. That's it. What is your job as a parent? Memorize this. Love and teach. That's it. That's all you do. That's your role. You can do it in one word, love and teach. You don't even need a sentence. And we're going to spend the rest of our time together. Well, we already have. This whole time I've been showing you how to love and teach, whether you realized it or not. And occasionally loving and teaching involves consequences. We're going to talk about a lot about those too. You explain that you will love them the best you can with mistakes and all, and you will also teach them. The teaching is critical. If you're just loving them, which they would define as giving them everything they want, and there's no teaching, then you are guaranteed to get a pampered, spoiled, entitled child. Really. I love and take care of my plants out in the backyard, but there's no teaching. So they're just plants in my backyard. We don't really have a close, intimate relationship. I don't miss them when I'm not there. Your relationship with your child is an entirely different thing because you add the teaching. And it turns out that the teaching is part of the loving, because if you genuinely care about their happiness, then you'd have to teach them the life course. They're not separate things, love and teach. That's why it's love and teach, and they're combined like this. As you're teaching them how to live for the rest of their lives, how to be happy. If you don't do that, you can't claim to care about their happiness. So we have to teach them. Have to. It's our job. Who else will? The mailman? Their school teachers are going to teach them the life course? No. The school teachers are just going to send them to the principal's office if they don't behave. And that doesn't teach them much. We're going to teach them how to be happy. We talked about in the last chapter about the three-legged stool and what produces happiness. What you teach them fulfills your three primary responsibilities. And you can tell them this. I'm going to tell you, and you can in turn tell them. Our responsibilities are to love our children to the point that they feel loved, to teach them how to love other people to the point that we can actually see them doing it. It's not just, you need to be loving to other people. Nice start, maybe, but kind of meaningless. And third, to teach them to be responsible to the point where they actually are. Because children who are loved, loving, and responsible are happy. You don't teach those three things, you just condemned your child to a life of misery. Who would knowingly do that? Well, now you know what's required so that you don't do that. So we're going to be smarter as we go. Because if you successfully do these three things, your kids will feel loved, be loving, be responsible. They will be happy. You don't actually pursue happiness as a goal. It's just a result of pursuing those three things. You train yourself and your kids to create the three legs of the stool, and then you get happy. Everybody wins. They win. You win. The people around them win. Their children win. Their future partners win. There's nothing else you're going to do. I said this, I think, on the sales page a long time ago, that will ring through the generations, possibly eternity, that's more important than teaching, loving and teaching your kids. If I had to teach parents just two things, just two, it would be this. And we've talked about them both. One, no anger. Ever. Two, love your children and teach them to feel loved, to be loving, to be responsible. That's the whole game. I would recommend writing that on a 3x5 card and carrying it in your pocket. It's that important. I actually carry in my pocket a folded 4x6 card because oddly they tick outdoor Georgia weather better than 3x5 cards. Couldn't tell you why. And my goals are on that. And I'll just pull them out and look at them. Because it reminds me of what I'm doing here, why I'm alive. It reminds me of the life course that I'm still taking. You're never done. Thousands of families have succeeded in doing exactly what I'm teaching you. It works consistently if you are consistent in loving and teaching. If you're half-hearted or intermittent in loving and teaching, you will fail. It doesn't work. It can't. Like anything else, it'd be like working out and eating right occasionally. Don't bother. Just go for the chocolate and the fast foods and lie on the couch and watch TV. Really. Practicing the piano. Well, I'll practice the piano once a month. Oh, really? Don't bother. You're not going to get better. We have to do this consistently with our kids. Another thing that we do after the first loving and teaching was on that list is teach them that wanting is not the same as needing. Now, what do I mean? Loving and teaching is not indulging. Some people might misinterpret from my tone that I'm just like, well, whatever. Comme ci, comme ça. Actually, I have no idea if that means that in French. Yeah, just whatever. I'll just love my kids no matter what they do. And then they'll become entitled brats. No. It's not indulgent. It's not permissive. It's not weak. And I tell you this because at some point, your kids will want or demand something they don't need. I have got to have the new iPhone 25. Got to. I got to have it now, and I'm going to stand in line all night to get it. It's a guarantee. There's going to be something like that. There actually are going to be many things like that. You will preemptively, before this happens, like in a family meeting, you're going to teach your kids that just because they don't get what they want, this is an important principle for you to understand before the next thing that I'm going to talk about. If they don't, just because they don't get what they want, that is not evidence that you're not loving them. Your job is to give them not what they want, although sometimes you will, just for fun. But your primary job is to give them what they need. If giving them what they want was the goal, if that's what love is, giving people what they want, then loving a cocaine addict would be really easy. You just set them up with an endless supply of cocaine. Would that be loving? That's what they want. I can tell you when I was a drug addict, that's what I wanted. Just an endless supply and just numb out. Just disappear, have the pain go away. Would that be loving? No. And you can use that example. So, if I don't give you what you want, then I don't love you. I promise you, if you ask that question, at some point they're going to go, yes, I really need this. And you're going to say, no, you really want this. Will you die? Will you become stupid? Will you lose? Is there anything bad that's going to happen if you don't have this? No, just that, well, you might not have the coolest phone in the school first. Yeah, that's called want. So you got to be prepared. Your kids will pull this trick on you. If you don't give them what they want, the new phone, the unrestricted phone time, the trip to Paris with their French class, but Dad, everybody is going. I just went through this with a parent 2 days ago. The class is going and I have to go. See, I need to go. My class is going. They don't have any interest in learning more French, I promise you. It's a joke that was once told by a stand-up comedian. How many people here in this room took 2 years of high school, whatever, French, Spanish, the entire room raised their hand. Now, how many of you can speak that language? Like, go to the country and, just not brilliant, not be a scholar, but, just conversational. There were no hands. So why does your kid want to go to France? And I'm not saying you should say no, because it'll be fun. And because Paris sounds cool, but mostly cool because they're going to be wearing the coolest thing and have the latest phone and take pictures of each other. And you're going to get 1,000 selfies up on their social media site. And that's why they want to go. And then if you say no, they're going to say, see, you don't care about me. You promised in the first truth telling that you'd learn to love me, but obviously that was a lie, and they'll spit these words at you or something similar. I'm just preparing you because this is going to come up. They get want and need confused, and you need not to get them confused or you are dead. Because then you'll either come across as a monster or you're going to enable your kids. So what's the response? What do you do when a child says, I have to go to Paris with my French class? It's in the tone, baby. You say something like, you don't have to memorize this because you're not me. My job is to love and teach you what you need. Hear my tone? No urgency. I'm not defending myself. Well, it's my job to... No, see, that's not going to work. My job is to love and teach you what you need. And we've talked in family meetings about what everybody really needs. Now you're going to take the weapon out of their hands because they remember this lesson. To feel loved, to be loving, and to be responsible. It's not my job to give you everything you want, because what you want is sometimes really different from what you need. Like the latest design of whatever, a car, the trip to, for young kids, it would be the latest new Lego creation or video game or whatever. When I was a kid, Legos were just blocks, and sheesh, my grandson sent me a picture of his Lego Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. Excuse me. Turns out they have assembly instructions that are as thick as a book, which proves they can learn. So it's easy to illustrate with the cocaine addiction thing. So would it be loving to feed a cocaine addict what he wants? There are lots of ways to teach him this principle. The next thing from the list where we talked about what you're going to continue to do after the first truth-telling, is tell me if I'm angry. Let me explain. This is a potentially big and scary moment for you, and I'm preparing you for it. You don't have to do it. I can't make you. But if you really want to be a new kind of parent, which I think you do, you've gotten this far in the parenting training. It's been, a fair bit of thinking and effort and soul searching and sometimes wanting to scream and, cry in your bed. If you really want to be a new kind of parent, you're going to have to say something like this. Quote, this is just an example. As I learn not to be angry, I might need you to tell me when I'm angry, because sometimes I get angry and I don't know it. End quote. And you have to mean it. Now, why? In the first place, we don't recognize when we're angry. Try this sometime. When somebody's just starting to ramp up their anger and you say, seems like you're angry, they'll deny it every time if they're just getting going. If they have pulled a gun and they're shooting holes in walls, then it's pretty obvious to them. But by that time, they won't answer the question either. So people won't like to admit being angry. Do you know why? Because deep down, we already know it's wrong. It's one of the ultimate proofs that anger is always wrong, because we argue about it and deny it almost every time. So we need the help seeing it. You say to somebody you're angry, they go, no, I'm not. It's just principle. And a very important principle that helps us to succeed at anything is accountability, which simply means that we don't make promises to the sky and hope it will turn out. How many times have we done that? Yeah, I promised to quit smoking. If you don't have some kind of accountability partner, somebody to go, so how's the smoking? How did it go yesterday? Or somebody who lives with you. When you go to light up and they just go, you asked me to hold you accountable. Do you really want to do that? An accountability partner isn't a policeman. They don't throw you in jail. It's not a judge. It's just somebody to report to, because we feel more responsible when we report. We do it. It's for our benefit. They're not there to punish us. We don't do as well with promises made to ourselves as promises made to people who will ask us how we're doing. That's what accountability is. Being accountable simply means that you report on how you're doing and get feedback, not criticized. All through untold years of high school, college, medical school, surgical training, I took more tests than I care to recall. Unbelievable. They were, on the whole, there were exceptions, they were not trying to fail me. What was the purpose of the test? To hold me accountable for the materials that I chose to study. I showed up in the classroom and I said, I'm willing to learn this stuff. All right, so they're going to hold me accountable. I claim to have a desire to learn it. So checking up on whether my claim to be learning matched my learning. That's part of accountability. In later years of schooling, in fact, the further along in schooling you get, they tried even more to help us succeed. The tests were in part to tell the teacher what he or she was not teaching well enough. No kidding. It was to let us know how we were doing so we could improve in our weak areas, so that at the end, when we got the big test, whether we would be a surgeon or a physician or a specialist or whatever, because every one of these specialties has a final examination. I spent 2 days being examined, first written. Actually, it was a whole day written, and then it was 2 days oral examination, where experts in my field sat me down and asked me questions before they were going to put on me the label of, yep, now you're officially a specialist surgeon. Way better to get feedback as you go than to get none and be surprised at the end that you've failed. Yeah, like duh. And so you're going to need feedback, especially from somebody who's there. If you're getting angry all the time and nobody holds you accountable and nobody tells you, then you're going to graduate your child from your family. They're going to go out into the world and they're going to be just doomed. Accountability is good for us and it's good for them, especially in parenting. If you're left to judge your own performance, you will tend to judge yourself by standards from the past. And you've already learned those don't work, or you wouldn't be right here. So where do you find this accountability? From whom? We talked about this in chapter 2. You'll find lots of people to help you. If you look for them, you will. You ask somebody, would you be willing to tell me when I am critical, angry, snotty, condescending, whatever? Not everybody will be willing to, because most people have learned that you don't really want to know. But you'll find some people to help you, especially the people that we suggest as resources. And we are establishing multiple ways for you to get more. Live seminars. Wow, will you get some feedback there? Where we all get together in person and we do this. Weekly conference calls. More, if required, more than weekly. Interventions, professional coaches, emails, newsletters, teaching you how to form your own parenting groups. We're handing you accountability out the ears. As you talk about what you're doing with your kids, you'll discuss what you said and did to these adults. And these people will, on occasion, help you see that you were angry with your child. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, I told my child that it doesn't matter what the rest of the sentence is. And I say, let me bet. They didn't listen. No, they didn't. I said, well, you were too angry for them to listen. I wasn't angry. Yeah, you really were. Why do you know? You weren't there. Well, you're not even telling me to change my behavior, and you're angry at me. You're angry at me as you tell me about the event. So, of course, you were angry at your child. We need adults as accountability partners. And if you really got some guts, you're going to ask your child to do it, because your child is the one you're the most likely to be angry at. Your child's the one who's there. Because without the accountability, you'll swear you were not angry. You'll swear on your life, but you were. We all need this kind of help. Our children are just another resource for accountability. It's our job to love and teach them. So it's a little tricky when we ask them for their feedback, but it's valuable because it's immediate. It's right while you're angry. The day after you're angry, you may forget entirely the event, much less that you're angry. They're with us every day in person. They watch us. They listen to us as we speak to them. It's invaluable. I've counseled with thousands of people, and one of the most common and potentially fatal mistakes people make personally and in their partnerships and with their children is to claim that they are not angry. when they are. That's fatal. Because if I'm consistently angry at you and I deny that I'm angry, well, then I'm going to keep it up. And we're not going to have a great relationship. Or parents will say, now, I'm not angry at you, but yeah, they really are. Doesn't matter what follows, but it's the tone. Or when their irritation is pointed out, parents say, no, I wasn't angry. And they say it with an angry tone or a defensive tone, but they are. How do I know? I can tell that people were angry even if they just give me a written account of what they said to their child. We choose different words when we're angry. Or they say, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated, not angry. There's no child that can make that distinction. All they feel is the just negative assault. Doesn't matter what you call it. The tone's the same. Statistically speaking, the statement is never true when you say, I'm frustrated, but I'm not angry. The number of times that it's true is so close to zero, we're going to call it zero. If we're frustrated, we're angry at the person or thing or circumstances we're frustrated with. Anger is part of frustration, as is fear, pain, and hopelessness. That's what frustration is. Anger plus fear plus pain plus hopelessness. That's frustration. Notice there's anger in there. So if you really want to be all in with this loving and teaching, you really just want to go for it. You get the feedback of your children and you ask them to tell you if you're angry. Tell me if I'm angry. You're asking them to tell you. And consistent with the family policy of happiness, you suggest that telling you kindly would be more effective, but you're not demanding it of them because it's your job to love and teach, not theirs. It's not their job to love and teach you. You're just asking for a resource, an immediate one, like examples. And you're going to need to give them examples because they've never dared to tell you that you were angry. They never dared to tell you anything except what they want. Dad, you're sounding irritated. There. You have to come up with something that they can agree that they can say and that you agree you can hear. There's no sense saying, well, just tell me if I'm angry if you haven't agreed on what's going to be said, because they're going to be too afraid to tell you. And you have to come up with something they can say and you can hear, or it's useless. Dad, it sounds like you're irritated. You agree that, yeah, I could hear that. And they say, I could say that. Well, then let's try that. I know another child who says to her mother, I'm giving you examples that children actually use, not ones that I've made up. Child says to her mother, Mom, I'm not feeling the love here. That kid's about 7, I think. One day, a 4-year-old, because the mom called me and told me, the 4-year-old said to his mother, Mom, do you need to make a real love call to somebody? That's humbling / humiliating. It also completely stopped the mother in her tracks, like she'd been, hit. When a 4-year-old says that, she didn't deny it because she was angry and the 4-year-old could feel it easily. Keep in mind what I said earlier about the fact that sometimes your children will accuse you of being angry only because you won't give them something they want. And in great part, it's because of your tone, but not always. Sometimes it's just because you refuse them. Even with that in mind, I can tell you that 90% of the time, if your children tell you that you're angry, you are. You'll swear you're not. But if you don't feel a Buddha-like peace as you're teaching them or interacting with them, which means no frustration, irritation, impatience, or even disappointment, you are angry. And they will see it sooner than you'll admit, at least in the beginning. Now, it's really tempting Because we all know what anger looks like at a 10 on a scale of 0 to 10. It's really tempting if we kind of live at an anger level of 4 to 5, and we're at a 4 to 5 and we're talking to our child, well, that's become normal. So we go, I'm not angry. Or if we've had a really great day, we're at a 3 of anger, and we say, I'm not angry. Children are sensitive to any anger. So we have to be willing to look at ourselves and say, am I anything less than completely peaceful? That's anger, not yelling, screaming, raising your voice and throwing things against the wall and breaking them. We have to be willing to admit our anger at lesser and lesser degrees. And then we'll see it. We'll be able to do something about it. And our children will begin to trust us. We've talked about identifying your anger and telling the truth about yourself to yourself and to other adults who can accept and love you and help you work through it. And even asking your own child to tell you when you're angry. Now, how do you avoid this anger in the first place? You have all those resources that we talked about in chapter 2, where I described how you can find love and support for yourself. The more loved you feel, the less pain and fear you'll have, and the less need you'll have to be angry, which is a reaction to pain and fear. People who feel, memorize this, I've said it before, who feel loved and happy don't get angry. Really. Most of us find that hard to believe because we've never been loved and happy, which really kind of proves we haven't. Prevention of anger with love is way more effective than trying to eliminate the anger once it's there. If you're already angry, reach out and tell an adult. We've talked about parenting groups, conference calls, forums, coaches, and more. So what do you say? What do you say when you call another adult about your anger? Because everybody asks that. And we talked about it in chapter 2. We're going to just remind you a little bit here. So you ring somebody up, you're furious, you don't know how to begin the conversation. Oh, I can give you 1,000 things, and on the conference calls and other places, I'll give you 1,000 things. But for now, you just start off with, I'm furious. That's good enough. If you're talking to somebody who's in a place where they're not furious, well, they'll be able to listen to you. They'll be able to see you, accept you, love you. You might say, do you remember how I have 3 children? And the other person says, yes. You say, well, I'm thinking of making it 2. We've all been in this place where we've been angry at a child. While you're angry, it's better to be honest and work it out with other adults than with your children, by far. Like I said, you can use your child as an asset to tell you that you're angry because they're right there and you might miss it. But you don't work through your anger with your children, and you certainly don't use them to find acceptance and love. So if you do use your child for an asset, is it possible that your children might exaggerate your anger to make them look better, or persecute it, or to manipulate you to do what they want? Oh, of course, I'm not that naive. For example, you might be angry at a 2 on a 0 to 10 scale. They react to you like you were at an 8. That's just arguing about degree. The fact is, you're still angry. So you still have to deal with that. If they exaggerate, it's almost certainly there to some extent. They rarely, almost never, does a child who's not feeling attacked, who's happy, who's feeling loved by you, come up to you and say, you're looking angry. Why would they do that and ruin the good feeling? Remember, I gave you the exception, and that is when you tell them no to something. They say, well, I want to go over to Susie's house. And you say, well, you can't go to Susie's house now. Occasionally, a manipulative child will say, oh, well, see, you're angry and you don't care about me. And you go, give me a second to think about it. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. I'll see if I feel angry. Right now, I don't think so. And for now, you still can't go to Susie's house. But even if they're 10% right about you being angry, admit it or you lose all credibility. And if you're angry, you can't truly love and teach because anger isn't loving. It just disqualifies you. Then real teaching is impossible. If you deny your anger, you lose trust and you can't help your child. It will be helpful for you to remember one principle that I talked about just a bit ago. After the first loving and teaching, you need to remember the principle that want is not the same as need, and you need to teach it to them. Children will often tell you that you're angry only because they didn't get what they wanted. So you've got to search your soul, real honesty. And if you really, really are not angry, you need to remind your children that it is not unloving of you simply not to give them what they want, because that's not your job. Your job is to love and teach them the 3 legs of the stool of happiness. Now, notice I've approached that want, need subject in about 3 different ways just in the last 5 minutes, because they're going to use it. Kids just naturally manipulate you to get what they want. It's not to test their boundaries. It's not to irritate you. They just want what they want. Entirely new subject. How to do this initial truth-telling with younger children. Young kids can't hear all the stuff that I listed in that 4 or 5 minute first truth-telling. It'll just go right over their heads. I mean, with a 3-year-old, you say all of that. I mean, they're going to understand most of the words, but they're really not going to know what you're talking about. So, no lecture with little kids. And you're wondering, well, so at what age will they understand? Oh, you already know. Read it or listen to it again, where I said all of it at the same time and go, so how much will my 3-year-old, because you talk to your 3-year-old all day, how much of that will they understand? And you just pick out the little bits that they will. Like, for example, with a really little kid, it's pretty simple. You go, we're not going to do anger and stuff around her anymore. Do you like it when I get angry at you? Just ask your 3-year-old. Every 3-year-old will understand that question. Do you like it when I get mad at you? Do you like it when mommy gets annoyed, irritated? No. Well, then we're not going to do that anymore, okay? We're not going to do mad anywhere. I'm not going to do it at you. You're not going to do it at your sister. Nobody likes it. You don't like it when I'm mad at you. Your sister doesn't like it when you get mad at her. So what do you think? Should we just not do that? And they're going to get it. And then you teach them on the fly as you go. Example, you get angry at your 4-year-old for pouring cereal and milk all over the floor, which is inevitable. The floor still needs to be cleaned up by the child, which we'll be talking about. And you also say, Billy, you did make a mistake when you made this mess. You know that. But I was wrong too. I was wrong to be angry at you. It's not loving, is it? And Billy's going to be going, they know. They understand. And he's already learned this in the family meetings where you've taught it or read it or played a segment of the parenting training. Let's take a 6-year-old. They will understand you as you tell the truth about yourself. That whole thing. You might have to use slightly different words. You might have to eliminate a sentence or two, but they're going to get it. You can actually have a family meeting that lasts like 5 minutes, and you can do that entire first truth-telling. You might make it a little simpler. You might say, we have a new goal in our family. We're going to do everything that makes us happy, and we're not going to do the things that make us unhappy. Then, at a young age especially, you role play. They love to play roles. They love it, especially when they play you. But you role play. You do or say some loving things. You practice. You pass around the roles. I'm not going to give you examples of loving things. You know those. You do some examples of unloving things. Why did you leave that out? It's mostly tone. In fact, you might even deliver that line to your child to be you and say it to you. They find that hysterical. So you can role play and show them what loving and unloving is. You might say, for example, have a seat. How many times have I told you not to get off your chair during dinner? And you say it with that tone of voice. Then you ask, was that loving? Then you show them, they're going to figure this out. Trust me on this. You may have to repeat it. You may have to try different versions. Then you say the very same thing. Sit back down. How many times have I told you not to get off your chair during dinner? You might want to do that one first, actually, because that one's really easy to identify. Was that loving? And the kid's going to be going, no. They're not stupid. You'll come up with lots of examples to use in these family meetings. You might even consider it, just consider the question. In tonight's family meeting, we're going to be talking about loving versus unloving. If you put that question in your head, you're going to come up with examples during the day. Carry a piece of paper with you or a card and write down the examples so that you're ready for the family meeting. Easy. Teaching children requires preparation just like teaching algebra does in high school. Another way to do the initial truth-telling and to describe this new direction to your family. You might say to the 6-year-old, do you like it when I'm angry at you? We used this a little bit as an example earlier. No. Well, then we're not going to do that anymore. I was wrong when I did that earlier today when you blank. So they're going to understand the principle and you're going to illustrate it with a real life example where you were angry and you're going to say, was that right of me? At first, they're not going to know quite what to say. No, you're going to say, right. It wasn't right. It was wrong of me. You got it right. I got it wrong. Do you think your brother likes it when you're angry at him? No. Now see, they're starting to get this. So we're not going to do that anymore either. Then you explain how you're going to love and teach them every time there's an argument. You're not going to yell at them anymore. You're going to say, what do I usually say when you fight? Stop it. Well, we're not going to do that anymore. And you and I, you who are listening now, we're going to talk even more in subsequent chapters about how to change arguments, although we already have. All this might not be easily received in the beginning. That's natural. You're changing the rules. So let's say the child's 11 years old. You've been teaching them one set of rules for 11 years, and then you come along and you go, oh, oops, we're changing the rules. Can you imagine in the middle of an NBA game, basketball game, for those of you who don't know what NBA means, for those of you who are wondering what NUBA is, you imagine in the middle of the game them saying, okay, so here's how we're going to change the rules. Possession, fouls, scoring, people would go nuts. Like really would go crazy. Even the fans at home would go crazy. And you're changing the rules of life for them. It's unwitting that you've taught them the wrong rules for 11 years. But they do perceive that it's a change. Keep going with the new rules and you'll win. The alternative, everybody wins. So do your kids. The alternative, to quit in order to avoid your children's disapproval, is unthinkable. They don't just stumble across learning how to feel loved. They're not going to learn it in the first grade or in the second grade, and the mailman's not going to teach them. They're not going to stumble across that or how to be loving or how to be responsible. And if you don't teach them, it's likely they never will learn. I talk to adults all day, every day, who were never taught these basic principles, which is why they're unhappy. It will adversely affect the rest of your children's lives too, because your children aren't different from the other children I see who are 40 years old. They still act like they're 4. So now we've talked about telling the truth about yourself to your children and to other adults. Now we're going to talk about telling the truth about yourself to you. I know that sounds a little weird, but see, it turns out that we lie to ourselves a lot. And by definition, if you are self-deceived, this is a little bit philosophical, but ignore it if you don't understand it right off. If you are self-deceived, you have fooled yourself. You really have fooled yourself. Then you don't know you've fooled yourself. So you've taught yourself a lie, and you really, no kidding, believe it. That's why we're talking about learning how to tell the truth about yourself. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. In an earlier chapter, we talked about, in fact, several times, events leading to judgments, which immediately lead to feelings and a response, a reaction. Our unproductive feelings and reactions come from wrong judgments, judgments that are lies that we were taught. We don't, as 2-year-olds, make up lies about the universe. We're taught them. It's not our fault that we believe them. And then we keep using these wrong judgments over and over, and we're mystified by why we keep having negative feelings and behaviors. Well, they all flow from the wrong judgments that we were taught, that we believe firmly. So here we firmly have our hands grasped around the truth, and the truth keeps biting our fingers off. And we go, I wonder why this keeps happening. Because we really were tricked in the beginning, and it just keeps going. We just keep believing it. So we have to learn to tell the truth about ourselves in the moment, even if we have only ourselves to talk to, better than to keep lying. If we can learn to do that, we can change everything for ourselves. It's nice to have somebody help us and to see us, accept us, and love us, but that's not always possible. We can change everything for ourselves and our kids. Yes, even better to feel loved. But to tell the truth about ourselves to ourselves is way better than nothing. So let's look at some of the lies we tell ourselves, which is the same as saying, let's look at some of the false judgments we have. Lies, false judgments, same thing. We were taught this stuff. Just around one subject, we'll start small. And that's variations on the command that we often issue to our children, and the command that we heard as children, stop that. So we're going to look at variations on that, which we often say to our children when they're fighting, arguing, doing something annoying, doing something dangerous, and on and on. We say variations of stop it all day. With different words, we say stop that a lot, which they translate as stop being you. That's the harm. We need to get better at seeing what we're actually saying to them. We think we're saying stop that to stop the contention and bring a peaceful home. I have never one time seen a parent say stop that to their child. Now the child will sometimes stop fighting, but I've never seen the child look peaceful or happy. And that's what we really want. So some of our intention is good, but it doesn't matter if our intention is 10% good. So first we will read, and I will state the variation on stop that, and then talk about the truth that we tell to ourselves. What stop that or that variation really means. First variation, stop fighting. Really means, it's going to be hard for you to hear, but it's the truth. When you feel empty and afraid, this is you talking to your child. What you're really saying is, when you feel empty and afraid, I don't like it when you defend yourself, as everybody else does, including me, when they feel that way. Instead, I want you to be loving. The truth is quite different from what we say. We say stop that when we're really saying you don't get to protect yourself like everybody else does and quit annoying me. It's utterly unrealistic. We've got to begin to see that. So why bother to learn to tell this truth? I reemphasize, it's best if you can tell the truth to another adult so another person can see you and love you. But if no adult is available, you can still tell the truth to yourself. Because as you do, you change an important judgment, one that leads you to feel angry at the child. What judgment changes as you tell this particular truth? So far, we've only talked about one. The old judgment is this. When these two kids are fighting, I hate the noise. Sounds like a reasonable judgment, but it leads to you feeling attacked, threatened, then afraid, and then you respond with your own anger. And boy, that just doesn't work. We've proven that a few thousand times. The old judgment is that their fighting is an inconvenience. I feel out of control. I don't know what to do. I'm not a good parent because they're fighting all the time. Frankly, I just hate the whole thing. So I got to stop it. But when you tell the truth, as I just showed you relative to stop fighting, telling the truth about your own fear and selfishness, because that's why you're really saying it. Yeah, you might be 5% motivated to help them, but mostly you just don't like the noise and the inconvenience. When you tell the truth, you can learn a new judgment. Like this. Here are some examples of the new judgments after you've told the truth. My children are just reacting to pain. That's not just a new judgment. It's the truth. That other stuff, the old judgments, aren't entirely true. Next, almost all of this, their pain, is caused by me, and of course made somewhat worse by each other, but it's mostly pain of not being loved by their parent, me. New judgment. I don't have to hate it. In fact, it's kind of stupid to hate their behavior because while I'm hating, I can't be loving. New judgment. I'm not out of control as I have been all of my life. I can make a choice here. I can choose a different judgment and then feel differently and respond differently. New judgment. It's just a small inconvenience. It's nothing. It's the price I pay for being a parent. In fact, really, it's a privilege that I get to love and teach them. And this is another judgment, just an opportunity for me to love and teach them. Those are crazy different judgments and true ones. Result, your judgments change. Your feelings are immediately different. Instead of feeling afraid and threatened by two kids fighting, you feel calm. Here's a chance for you to be a real parent. That's what you wanted to be in the first place. If there's calm, you're not afraid. You're not going to respond with anger. You're not going to respond with controlling. Stop it. You're not going to wound your kids anymore. Do you see how cool this is? Just by telling the truth about you. And we'll be talking a lot more about other examples of changing your judgments. Notice how we keep building your awareness and your choices as you interact with them. And your ability will grow to handle more and more difficult stuff. We're going to get to some really difficult stuff. In other words, I'm loving and teaching you, just as I'm suggesting you do with your children. Now, the next variation, a next variation on stop that would be quiet. That's just a version of stop that, which really means, we say that a lot, be quiet in there. You two are making too much noise in there. It means I'm so selfish, intolerant, and controlling that I can't live with the noises that all children make at your age. I can't live with the natural noise of my own kids. That's the truth. And it's a little embarrassing. So what is the change in judgment that needs to be made from the old stop that to the truth? It's similar to stop fighting. The old judgment, I hate it when my kids make noise. It's annoying. They are annoying. I hate having to stop it over and over again, but I have to stop it because I hate the noise and they need to learn to be quiet. New judgments. Kids make noise. Kids that age make a lot of noise. They entertain themselves and each other with the noise. They're not making noise to me. They're just being kids. Now, sometimes the noise they're making might be unnecessary. They don't really have to take two metal pots and bang them endlessly in the kitchen. That might get to be you might send them outside with the pots. But as long as they're not fighting, which hurts them both, anger is always unloving, why would I not be thrilled that my children are being exuberant, that they're enjoying life, that they're having fun? And again, yes, I recognize there are times not to make noise. It's not appropriate to dribble a basketball on the pews in church. I got that. I got what's appropriate noise and not appropriate noise, but wow, our tolerance for noise is very little. Most noise is normal from kids. I used to run a Boy Scout troop, and it was huge. And I ran it by myself. Most Boy Scout leaders have a bunch of assistants, and I discovered that other adults are way too intolerant of children. So I would have 30 kids together, like a lot. We would do things 2, 3, 4 times a week. No matter how noisy they got, I could stop the noise of 30 boys who are 14 and 15 years old, all of them. That's the age of poison for an adolescent boy. I could stop it all in an instant. All I had to do was just raise my hand. And 2 or 3 kids would see it, and they'd go, psh, psh, and they'd make whatever sound it took, and the sound was done in less than 2 seconds. Why? Because of the many, many, many times before that where I let them be adolescent boys. In other words, I said, yes, yes, yes to noise. Make all the noise you want. Run screaming and yelling through the parking lot. Bang pots and pans. I allowed them to make all the noise they wanted to. The noise that they had been prevented from making by other adults all of their lives. But if I needed quiet, because there was something I wanted to teach them, for example, then I just raised my hand and they were all instantly quiet. But mostly precisely because I did let them be boys. Adolescent boys who make noise. Same with my children and grandchildren. Making noise is just an opportunity for me to love and teach them. Love by just letting them be themselves. And occasionally teach them when noise is like inappropriate at a time or place. Like you can't blow an air horn, one of those cans of compressed gas that makes a noise that is just unforgettable. You can't blow an air horn in the hall just outside the room where your 2-year-old sister is sleeping. Okay, so then we teach them that. And they go, oh, okay. I said, but we can blow the air horn out in the woods. Cool. We run out in the woods and we blow the air horn. If you get to all these new judgments, in other words, if you're seeing things as they really are, they're not just new, they're true. Could you possibly be angry at your children? No, impossible. Another variation on stop it is, can you not hold still? Because they, move around a lot when they're little, which really means stop moving around and acting your age. Behave like an adult, which we say, of course, to a 3-year-old. Who's the dumb one here? It's us, the adult. Can you feel the impatience slip away as you tell the truth about yourself? Let's try it. It's impossible to be impatient as you see your own selfishness, as you see that you're saying, I know you're just 4 years old or 3 or whatever, but act like you're 30. What? be like saying to a 4-year-old, I know you're 4, but I'm tired and I want to go to sleep in the back seat, so you drive us the rest of the way home. It both make equal sense. It's immediately calming to see the right judgment. Another example. Do you have to make that much noise with your gum? Really means you're not allowed to do anything that could possibly disturb the peace and quiet of my Royal Highness. And kids really can't chew gum quietly. It's just not possible. I'm pretty sure it's a physiologic rule. Another judgment, or actually another way we say stop that. Whatever you're doing in the next room, stop it. Really means, and this is what they hear, stop breathing. Everything about you bugs me. Another stop it. Get down from there. Really means I don't trust your judgment at all. You'll fall and kill yourself, and then I'm going to feel like a stupid parent, and if you bleed, then I'll have to clean up the blood. That's what we really mean. You get the pattern, which applies to stop everything. Running, bothering that person, bouncing in your chair, and on and on. Most of the time, when we say stop it to our children, what we really mean is stop being yourself. Quit acting your age. Quit inconveniencing me. I have huge expectations about what I want from you, and when you fail to meet them, you are an enormous disappointment to me. That's what we really mean, and that's what they feel. They couldn't put it into words, but that's what they feel. Making noise, wiggling, arguing, and being foolish are natural, unavoidable characteristics of children. That's what they do. Because they're learning. When we feel loved ourselves, these behaviors don't bother us. I don't care when my grandchildren are doing these things. We also need to see their getting and protecting behaviors as a sign of their emptiness and fear, not as inconveniences that we need to quickly eliminate. They need to be loved and taught, not stopped. And that would apply to all the behaviors on the slides that we looked at previously. Read each one of these. We've looked at each of them before. You've seen this slide many times before. These behaviors are what your children do when they're in pain. That's it. And somewhere in there is your child. Your child might be in more than one place in there. We have been taught to believe that we have to address each of these problems, what we call problems, really reactions to pain, separately. Phone addiction, for example, is different from the addiction to porn or drugs or cutting or ADHD and on and on. So we have to take our child to the right specialist for each one, or go to the right inpatient treatment center. With rare exceptions, no, pretty much not. All these kids are in pain. And it's the same pain. They don't feel unconditionally loved, so they don't need to go to 12 different centers. And they need you to love and to teach them, not a therapist. They need you to teach them to feel loved, to be loving, and to be responsible, which we have discussed and will continue to discuss. Your child is on this slide. When we understand that, we see how selfish and harmful it is for us to just say, stop it, in whatever clever and self-justified way we do that. Again, this does not mean that we should ignore inappropriate behavior. A child who is throwing full cans full of food off the shelves at the grocery store really does have to stop it. A, because it's disruptive to other shoppers, it's potentially harmful. If they hit somebody, it damages property. Come on, you know what really inappropriate behavior is. But we must learn that we need to influence our children by loving and teaching them rather than simply controlling them, even when they're throwing full cans off the shelves. And we'll discuss more and more, as we already have in every chapter up to this point, what it means to love and teach. More examples of our telling the truth. about ourselves, about our situations, about our children. We can tell these to ourselves to change our judgments and subsequently immediately change our feelings and reactions. We can change our choices. I know that it says event, judgment, feeling, reaction. If I had to go back, I'd probably change the word reaction, because what we're really doing is changing our choices, or more appropriately, finally making choices, rather than to simply react. We can tell the truth about ourselves also to other adults, to parents, to real love wise people and coaches, to parents who are taking or who have taken this ridiculously effective parenting training, or whoever will listen, or use any of the many resources we're providing to parents on the Real Love Parents site. So let's provide some more examples of truth-telling. Notice that I have never suggested that you just go out into the world and randomly vomit your life to people as a form of truth-telling. I'm suggesting how you could do it, where the lies and the truths are, and with whom. I just stated that, with whom. I'm loving and teaching you just as I'm suggesting you do with your children. So we'll talk about some of the very common lies that we all tell, and then we'll talk about the truth. Mostly, we don't even recognize when we're lying. We've been doing it for so long. So an example, the lie. How many times do I have to tell you to fill in the blank? Clean your room, do your homework, pick up your socks. We say this when we've repeatedly told a child to do or not to do something. It's always said, how many times do I have to tell you? That's not a question. We're not looking for a number. It's always said with impatience and a frown on our face. And it wouldn't even make sense to say, so, roughly how many times do you think we've had this conversation? No parent says it that way. So what's the truth? The truth is, quote, I just can't believe you're so stupid, but you must be, or I wouldn't have to keep telling you the same thing over and over. If I were more loving, I would patiently teach you this lesson as many times as it takes. That's the truth. But my life is so empty and unhappy that if everything around me doesn't go smoothly, I get upset and angry. I hope you notice that this is so weird sounding that it indicates that we've never talked like this, but it's still the truth. Continuing with the child, quote, so when you don't listen to me, I don't think about loving and teaching you. No, I selfishly attack you instead and try to make you do what I want. End quote. That's the truth. When we feel unloved and empty ourselves, it's easy to forget that our role as parents is to love and teach. We don't just forget. We can't remember. When we don't have any love to give, we require them to make our lives easier. Makes sense. Or at least not to inconvenience us. When they fail to meet that expectation, we attack them. When we say, how many times do I have to tell you? Our children finish that sentence in their heads and in their hearts with the words, you idiot, or something similar. It's really that awful. If we told the truth, what would happen? Well, what if we told the truth to other people? We'd find people who could understand us, identify with us, accept us, love us, and thereby we would get some of the very love that we need in order to love and teach our children instead of barking at them. What if we told the truth to ourselves? We just stopped ourselves from saying the lie and told the truth. We couldn't continue with our unloving behaviors. They're embarrassing. And they're obviously lies, based on lies. What if we told the truth to our children after attacking them based on a lie? We would increase their feeling of trust toward us. We would increase our connection, and we would eliminate confusion, as we've discussed before. Another lie. A frown. Oh, this one is common, and we never identify it as a lie. We look at our child and just do everybody knows 1,000 variations of this look, or the glare, Mostly we're unaware of how often these expressions of disappointment and disapproval appear on our faces. We're not looking in the mirror when we do them, but our children are quite sensitive to these silent but lethal communications. They are, very. What's the truth? If we were to say what our frown was implying, we'd say, "You disgust me." It's that awful. We would say, "Right now my life is less happy as a result of you being in it." Could we be more ugly? We say, "You are inconvenient and irritating, and I wish you were different or gone." I'm not exaggerating when I say that's what they feel. They hear all that, they feel it, even though they couldn't put it into words. When we don't feel loved ourselves, we have enormous expectations of our children to make us happy, or at least not to add to our unhappiness. And although these expectations are understandable, well, they're also selfish and harmful and wrong. Our children often make gallant efforts to shoulder these unreasonable responsibilities that we give them to make us happy, but they just can't keep doing it. When they fail, our disappointment just crushes them. So our seeing the truth changes everything about how we feel and behave. It's amazing. Let's look at another lie. The lie is, "Give mommy a kiss." We commonly ask for signs of affection from our children, especially at bedtime or as they leave the house for school. What is the truth? Quote, "I often feel unloved and alone." This would be you speaking, like to another adult. You wouldn't say this to a child, but the truth. "I often feel unloved and alone, but when you smile at me or kiss me, I feel valued, important, and less lonely. I usually can't depend on getting affection from the adults in my life when I want it, so I ask for love from you. After all I've done for you, you're less likely to refuse me than other people are. It's your responsibility to make sure I'm happy." It sounds like an innocent little thing, but listen to the truth compared to the lie. It's hugely different, and it's a big burden for a kid. When we're unhappy, we expect a lot from our children: support, respect, obedience, courtesy, affection. And we've talked about this elsewhere, that respect, obedience, and so on are good things. But then we use those good things to justify our demands for those things for us. And that's where we go wrong. Demands never make another person feel valued, and we have no right to expect love from a child, which we talked about considerably. We tend to justify ourselves by saying that we're just making a request. "Give mommy a kiss." But we confirm that our requests for affection are really demands. Every time we're disappointed in them or angry at them on the occasions when they don't give us what we want. Look what happens if a child goes, "No," and runs up the stairs without the kiss. Yeah, it doesn't go well after that. Mommy or daddy gets annoyed, tells them to come back downstairs. "What did I tell you?" It really does go downhill quickly. Our children are not responsible for our happiness. It's a dictum, it's a law. Again, we would not usually tell this truth to our children. You wouldn't say to a child, "I usually can't depend on getting affection from the adults in my life when I want it, so I ask for love from you and you kind of owe it to me." They'd be confused and it wouldn't really help them. But we could tell it to ourselves, and we've talked about telling the truth about ourselves to ourselves because it changes our judgment. We could tell it to other adults so we can feel accepted and loved. Another lie. "I love you." Oh, come on. How could that be a lie? Because here's the truth. And I mean almost all the time when we say "I love you" to a child. "I love you" usually means "I need you." Well, it's true when we say it to partners too. "I need your gratitude, respect, and affection." If I genuinely loved you, I'd care about your happiness first. But that's not my primary intent. Yeah, I love you unconditionally some, but my primary intent is I want something back. And I prove that with my disappointment and anger each time you fail to meet my expectations. Disappointment and anger are utterly incompatible with the claim, I love you. You can't claim that both are true. But I tell you that I love you. You're still telling the truth here to another adult because I know I should. That's what loving parents are supposed to say. I look good if I say it. I look bad if I don't. And then, this is possibly the dessert of this, the cherry on top. If I say I love you to you, you're more likely to say it back to me. And yeah, I really like that. In fact, now, end quote, now, speaking to you, the common exchange of I love you is almost a socially accepted obligation. If somebody says I love you too is the next thing. Kind of like you look good, so do you. Just automatically. There was a commercial years ago, and it was for some sort of home stock, online stock trading company. And there was a couple in a restaurant, and it was, a little dimly lit, not enough, you couldn't see them. And the two of them are at a small table for two, sitting across from each other, I think touching hands possibly. And she says to him, I love you. And then there's this dead silence. Now, on a commercial, for there to be silence for like 10 seconds, which I'd be the maximum that it was, seems like forever, especially for the people who are paying for the commercial, I'm sure. 10 seconds of nothing. She stands up and stomps out of the restaurant. He doesn't show any reaction to that at all, but after she stomps out of the restaurant, he says, I love you too. The point of the commercial was, it's obviously about timing. And they were talking about it in trading stocks. But the point of the commercial to me was when somebody says, I love you, it's more than expected that you say, I love you back. You have to. If you don't, it's just like saying, well, tough. I don't particularly like you, so get over it. It's a socially accepted exchange. It's not with our words that we most powerfully and clearly communicate to our children how genuine our love for them is. It's our behavior, our smiles, frowns, silence, tone of voice, the time we spend with them that makes the greatest impression on them. When they see in our behavior that we disapprove of them, control them, and otherwise conditionally accept them, they actually come to resent us saying, I love you, or I'm so proud of you. So many kids just hate it. And then they often come to hate saying or hearing I love you as adults, which often doesn't work for their partners. And it turns out we caused the whole thing by not unconditionally loving them in the first place. In our defense, our deception with saying I love you is not intentional. I get this. That's true with all of these lies. Rarely do we lie to our children intentionally. No, we were just trained to do this, or we reflexively do it to protect ourselves or to get something. We do generally give our children the best we have. So, do we love our children unconditionally? A, maybe a little, but most of us have never seen it, so how would we even offer a little? B, well, we give them all we've got, but the most accurate answer is C, probably not much, and certainly not enough that they feel it. When we do fail to love them, it's only because we don't have sufficient real love to give them. We didn't get it. And again, in our defense, we also tell our children we love them because we actually do have some genuine component of wanting to love them. And that counts. Our motivations are good, but we got nothing. I could have the best motivation in the world to be the last at bat in the World Series in baseball and hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. But all the best intentions in the world aren't going to help me as the ball goes right by me into the catcher's mitt and I strike out. Motivations and intentions are just not enough. A lie. Where are you going? Now, we ask this almost always with an accusing tone. When a child is going out the door and we don't know his or her plans, or we forgot. So it usually comes out to, where are you going? That's how it comes out. It doesn't come out as a question. It's an accusation. The truth is, if we were to say the truth to the child, which I'm not recommending, I don't trust you. You are so foolish and irresponsible that you couldn't possibly choose how to spend your time wisely without my close, detailed supervision. In addition, when you make decisions on your own and you don't tell me, I feel kind of helpless, kind of useless. I feel left out and unloved, and I don't like that. End quote. I'm not saying we shouldn't know where our children are. No, of course we should. But we often demand that accounting in such a way that they feel, well, violated. Look at their faces. Where are you going? I mean, they feel punched and controlled, not accepted and loved. When our children don't tell us where they're going and what they're doing, we feel disrespected and out of control, so we insist on being informed. It's that disapproving tone that proves that we insist. We forget that the reason they don't tell us their plans is that they fear and hate the criticism and disapproval we've given them so many times when they have shared their plans. They have told us where they're going, and we go, you're going where? I mean, why would you want to do that? Who's going to be with you? Are the parents going to be there? What are the names and addresses and phone numbers of all of the people that you're going with? Do you have a signed permission slip? We grill our kids about what they're doing. So they're going, yeah, I'm going to avoid that, just not say anything. When they feel loved, they feel comfortable telling us where they are all the time. But what if they don't? What if a child is going out the door without your knowing where he's going? What is an appropriate way to ask him where he's going? Just keep it straight and simple. It's about the tone. It's about saying like this. So where are you going? Where are you headed? You might even add, you may have told me, but I don't remember. They can tell the difference between curiosity, accountability, and being accused. They really can. We often can't, but they can. But it's not just the words. It's that we're not disappointed or angry with them. That's what hurts them. Another lie. You are so, and then the sentence stops. Well, or continues with any number of things. When we get angry at our children, we often use incomplete sentences. Watch people when they're mad. Most of us haven't even noticed that we do this or that anybody else does it. The sentences are choked off by irritation and frustration. We are so annoyed we can't even finish it. Also because we know that if we did finish the sentence, that it could be embarrassing because the words that would follow would be really just ugly. So we say things like, can you feel that? Or it's the tone. It's the choking off of the remaining words. Or they do something wrong, you say, every kid has heard this. I can't believe you. And then we sigh and we grunt and whatever. What's the truth? Because I'm selfish, I get angry when you dare to inconvenience me. I really want to say something mean and hurtful, but I don't want to look too monstrous, so I'll start the sentence and I'll let you finish it in your head with something awful. That's really sneaky. That way, I won't look completely unloving and out of control, but you'll still get the disapproving and angry message. Not pretty, but it's true. We've all done it. The lie. Silence. How could silence be a lie? Comes in many forms. The disapproving glance. When we look over at them without even looking at them, just sort of roll our eyes in their direction. The glare. Failure to speak. When our children, just failing to speak, when our children enter a room and we don't speak to them, they often interpret our silence as a lack of caring, and usually they're right. How long does it take to speak a child's name or say hello when they enter a room? What excuse can we offer for not recognizing them and speaking to them? What could we be doing that's more important than recognizing and appreciating our children? Like, really? Physical withdrawal, another form of silence. We often don't realize how much we avoid our children physically when we're angry at them. We do it with our partners and others. We get so angry that finally we just sleep on the couch, for example. Silent, but oh, what a spear to the heart, huh? And we do it with our kids. A simple lack of interest in their activities. When we ask about the things they do, they know we care about them. If we really ask and don't interrogate. When we don't ask, they feel the neglect. Genuine interest is different, however, from prying or insisting on information that a child is reluctant to give, like earlier when we talked about that, where are you going? And you know the difference? Prying sounds different. Where were you? That is not a question. Who'd you go with? Well, where do they live? What'd you do? Did you ask them to see their birth certificate? Did you vet them properly before you went out with them? Everybody knows the difference between asking a question and prying, especially when they're on the receiving end. When we're on the giving end, we act like suddenly we're stupid and we don't know the difference. The truth. Quote, I don't have the first clue how to engage you in a conversation. Again, you wouldn't say this to the child, but if you were speaking the truth, this is what you'd say. For one thing, I haven't bothered to learn enough about you to even know where to start. So I take the easy way out and I don't say anything. Sometimes I'm silent because I'm disappointed or irritated. On other occasions, I'm just avoiding my responsibility to teach you because you often act annoyed when I say anything to you. We use silence as a protecting behavior, often to run from difficult conversations, but it leaves our children feeling more alone and unloved. Another lie. I just don't know what to do with you. This is an almost wicked one. Communicates so much with so few words. The truth. It's obvious that you don't feel loved, or you wouldn't act like this. But I don't know how to love you and teach you, and then I feel stupid and helpless. So let's see, I could keep feeling stupid and helpless. That'd be choice 1. Or choice 2, I'll shift the blame and hopefully the discomfort to you. Yeah. End quote. When our children behave in ways that frustrate us, meaning usually that we can't control them, it's tempting to blame them for how we feel. If we can reassure ourselves that something is wrong with them, I don't know what to do with you, well, then we don't have to consider the more painful prospect that we need to change. It's a cheap way to make ourselves feel comfortable, but one that causes great harm to our children. Another lie. Don't you talk to me like that. You've all heard that tone. What's the truth? Quote, I feel unloved and alone. Without real love, I reach out for whatever imitation love I can find. Respect, power, praise. After all I've done for you, you at least owe me some respect. Tempting. And I'm in a position of authority where I can demand it from you. True. Something I can't do with most people. End quote. A child speaks disrespectfully only to defend himself or to relieve his sense of helplessness. If we saw him clearly, we'd give him what he really needs, our unconditional acceptance and guidance, instead of insisting on respect for ourselves. If we loved and taught them properly, their respect for us would just automatically happen. It's true that children need to be respectful. It's part of being considerate, grateful, and happy, as we talked about in an earlier chapter. But we rarely insist on respect for their benefit. We do it for ourselves. We can teach genuine respect and gratitude and obedience to our children, but only as we love them, as we've talked about repeatedly. A lie. How do you explain these grades? I've heard that one many times. We say variations on this when our children perform in some unsatisfactory way, not just their grades, maybe their athletic performance, maybe how they behaved when there was company over, whatever. The truth: I'm so disappointed when you perform badly. Part of my motivation is encouraging you to do better so that you'll be happier, but poor grades, for example, will impact your ability to make happy choices in the future, but there's also considerable selfishness on my part. When you fail to do well, I feel like a lousy parent, and I'm embarrassed at the thought of other people thinking badly of me. I wish you were smarter. I wish you worked harder, and I hate it that you make me uncomfortable like this. End quote. The instant children feel our disappointment for not meeting our expectations, they know they're not being loved unconditionally. They know it. Criticizing our children's performance never makes them happy and rarely improves their performance. Even if it does, it's not for long. Ironically, even children who are praised for success often become miserable, sometimes many years later, because they know the praise they receive is conditional. We're going to be talking about this a lot in the next chapter. They know that if they don't live up to the expectations people have of them, they will be criticized and lose the approval they need so badly. They feel trapped by the obligation to succeed all the time. A lie. You make me so mad. There are few lies more common than this one. In fact, every time we get angry at a child without saying, you make me mad, we're actually telling them that they make us angry, even if we don't use those exact words, because we're saying it directly in conjunction with something they did, and we're looking right at them, and we're angry. We're clearly blaming them. Whether we say we're blaming them or not, it doesn't matter. The truth, quote, I hate being inconvenienced, and I selfishly want to control you and stop you from ever getting in my way. You can make your own choices and mistakes with everybody else, but not with me. When you fail to recognize that the world revolves around me, I get angry, and I blame you for how I feel rather than taking responsibility for the lack of real love in my life. In a previous chapter, I explained at length how other people never make us angry, and that would include our kids. These are all truths you can tell to real love parents, coaches, and other people who will be loving and supporting you. You can tell them to yourself. Some of these truths would be inappropriate to tell to your child because they'd be too hurtful. As you talk with friends, don't limit yourself just to telling the truth about the mistakes you make with your children. Also talk about your selfishness with your spouse, your coworkers, and others. Create as many occasions as possible where you can feel seen, accepted, and unconditionally loved. Let's summarize what we talked about in this chapter. We talked about the reasons to tell the truth about ourselves to our children. I gave an example of the first truth-telling, or the first loving and teaching, which begins to change everything. You're letting your kids know, I really screwed it up in the past, and now we're changing it. We talked about how to continue with loving and teaching after the first truth-telling, how to change our judgments, which changes everything else. And we talked about many examples of changing the lies that we unconsciously tell our children.